Chapter 1126. Master, you've sealed Lin Ruobai's soul, so she's now a body without a soul. The divine grimoire won't reject her entry. Little Mo explained patiently. Yun Luofeng nodded. All right, then I'll put her in the divine grimoire first. Next, it's time for me to settle the score with these people. As she finished speaking, she waved her hand and the girl lying on the ground disappeared without a trace. Then, she turned and walked out of the prison. At this moment, the girl's aura was terrifying. She was like a demon from hell, so powerful that it made people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. The Nangong family. Inside the courtyard, under the pressure of the Rat Queen, no one dared to move. Like birds startled by the mere twang of a bow, their eyes were filled with fear. In the past, they could still rely on the ancestral elders. Unfortunately, the ancestral elders had already been tied up by vines. Having lost their protection, they didn't even dare to run away. Amidst this fear, Yun Luofeng slowly walked over from the front. The cold moonlight shone down, enveloping the girl's snow-white dress. However, it couldn't cover up her terrifying aura. With every step she took, everyone's hearts trembled. The fear in their eyes had already turned into despair. Yun Luofeng, Nangong Yuni was startled when he saw Yun Luofeng come alone. You couldn't save your disciple? Yun Luofeng shook her head. I've already sent her to a safe place. Don't worry. I'm here now to settle the score with the Nangong family. Her aura didn't change. Her evil eyes turned towards Nangong Qing. Previously, I gave you a chance because of Nangong Yuni, but I didn't think that you wouldn't take advantage of it. Nangong Qing's expression changed. You said you gave me a chance because of Yi Er? What a joke. If you really thought of him as a friend, you wouldn't have fed me poison. Yun Luofeng's black eyes were deep and serene. What I gave you wasn't poison, but a great tonic. Originally, I wanted Nangong to tell you everything when he returned. Who knew that you wouldn't give him the chance? A great tonic? Nangong Qing's eyes widened and his body trembled. You're lying to me. This is impossible. Absolutely impossible. If you don't believe me, you can feel the power in your body. Is it much stronger than before? Yun Luofeng's voice was very calm, so calm that no emotion could be heard. Nangong Yuni clearly knew that the current Yun Luofeng was so angry that he wanted to kill someone. However, in order to make Nangong Qing regret for the rest of his life, she temporarily suppressed the anger in her heart. Nangong Qing was shocked and quickly sat down cross-legged. As he inspected his body, his expression became more and more unsightly. That's right. This was not a poison. Instead, it strengthened his physique. The funny thing was that he actually thought that it was poison and didn't hesitate to commit such a huge mistake. I gave you the tonic for Nangong. If you weren't Nangong's father, I would have treated you the same as the other two aristocratic families. The girl's evil and awe-inspiring voice cut through the void and fell into everyone's ears. Nangong Yuni looked at the young girl standing in the wind, and the corners of his lips curled into a smile. Yun Luofeng was a person who cherished old friendships. Even if she didn't like Nangong Qing, she would still have shown mercy for him. Unfortunately, Nangong Qing didn't properly cherish this opportunity. As a result, he was reduced to eternal damnation. Chapter 1127. Nangong Qing staggered to his feet and shook his head. His face was pale as he said, Why did this happen? Oh right, you said you were merciful because of Nangong Yuni, but Nangong is not my son. He's just a bastard. If you knew this, you would still have poisoned me. Ha ha ha. After he finished speaking, Nangong Qing started laughing maniacally. His bloodshot eyes were fixed on Nangong Yuni. Yun Luofeng subconsciously turned to look at Nangong Yuni before looking at Nangong Qing. You said that Nangong is not your son? Where is the evidence? Nangong Qing laughed mockingly. His mother is a bitch. Back then, I loved her so much but she had an affair with my brother and gave birth to that bastard, Nangong Yuni. The funny thing is that I was kept in the valley and even planned to pass the Nangong family to Nangong Yuni. Your brother? Nangong Chen? Yun Luofeng laughed coldly. Milk tea, Rat Empress, bring Nangong Chen to me. Nangong Qing was stunned. He didn't understand how Yun Luofeng knew Nangong Chen's name. Just as he finished speaking, milk tea and the rat empress disappeared. The gold-seeking rats were very fast and were very good at finding people. Hence, it didn't take long for the tortured Nangong Chen to be brought before them. Mu Qianqian and her daughter had a bad feeling when they saw Nangong Chen being brought here. Behave yourself. Milk tea threw the struggling Nangong Chen on the ground and warned him fiercely. Nangong Chen was confused. He looked at the ancestral elder who was tied up by the vines and then at the pale Nangong Qing. He clearly didn't understand what was going on. At this moment, a bone-chilling voice came from beside him, causing his body to freeze. Do you know Yang Shui? Yang Shui? Nangong Chen was stunned. He quickly raised his head and stared at the beautiful girl next to him. What do you mean? The girl's lips curled into a cold smile. Her black eyes were deep. Your first love, Yang Shui, is already dead. Boom. Nangong Chen's body trembled. He quickly got up from the ground and angrily charged at Yun Luofeng. Bang! Before he could reach Yun Luofeng, the girl lifted her leg and kicked him into the crowd. Nangong Chen coughed twice and spat out a mouthful of blood. His handsome face looked hideous. Nonsense. Shui can't be dead. She's definitely not dead. If you don't believe me, you can ask Mu Qianqian to bring her here. You can see if she will hand over your men. In an instant, everyone's eyes focused on Mu Qianqian's face. Mu Qianqian's face turned pale and she glared angrily at Yun Luofeng. Don't you try to frame me. I don't know this Yang Shui. I don't even know who she is. Suddenly, Nangong Chen got up again and dashed toward Mu Qianqian. Mu Qianqian didn't have Yun Luofeng's reflexes, so her clothes were instantly grabbed by Nangong Chen. His face was ferocious as he roared, Mu Qianqian, what did you promise me? As long as I listen to you and frame Nangong Yuni and his mother, you'll let Shui go. It's been more than 20 years. Where have you hidden my Shui in these 20 years? Return her to me. Return her to me. Nangong Chen screamed at the top of his lungs. His blood-red eyes looked as if he wanted to devour someone. Chapter 1128. You lunatic, let go of me. Mu Qianqian raised her hand and slapped Nangong Chen across the face. She was so angry that her entire body was trembling. I've already said that I don't know who Yang Shui is. I don't know what you're talking about either. Where am I supposed to find someone for you? Nangong Chen burst into laughter. As he laughed, tears began to stream down his cheeks. Mu Qianqian, I shouldn't have listened to you and framed Nangong Yuni and his mother. Otherwise, I wouldn't have harmed two innocent people. In the end, I couldn't even save Shui. Don't think that I don't know that Nangong Lan is not my big brother's daughter. She's a bastard child that you had after a night of flirting with another man. In order to find a scapegoat, you plotted against my big brother while he was drunk. Nangong Chen's lips curled into a sarcastic smile. He recalled everything that he had done for the past 20 years. He really wanted to give himself 2 tight slaps across the face. However, after hearing his words, Nangong Qing's body froze. He widened his eyes in disbelief and glared at Nangong Chen. What did you just say? Fua was wrongly accused by you? Ye is really my son? He must be lying. This is impossible. Nangong Chen sneered, Big brother, you're really stupid. You believe everything that Mu Qianqian and I say. Your beloved woman has never betrayed you. Ye is indeed your son. Boom. As if a bolt of lightning had struck his head, Nangong Qing's face turned as red as a pig's liver. His body trembled as he looked at Nangong Yuni, who was covered in wounds. He felt a pang in his heart. Fua did not betray me. Ye is really my son. What on earth is he doing? He chased away his beloved woman and caused his only son to suffer such serious injuries. You're lying. Nangong Lan charged towards Nangong Chen like a madman, her fists hammered fiercely on his body. I'm the daughter of the Nangong family. I'm my father's child. You dare accuse me of shielding Nangong Yuni? Who does Nangong Yuni think he is? What right does he have to be my father's son? Nangong Chen did not dodge and allowed Nangong Lan to hammer him fiercely. At this moment, he was already prepared to die. Since Shui-Er was already dead, what was the point of him living on? If he couldn't protect her when she was alive, he wouldn't let anyone hurt her when he was in hell. Nangong Ching looked at Nangong Uni with a pained expression. His face was filled with guilt. Father is too much of a bastard. I actually thought that you were Nangong Chen's bastard. It's father's fault. Father has let you down. He begged for Nangong Uni's forgiveness not only because Nangong Uni was his son, but also because he had a good relationship with Yun Luofeng. If Nangong Uni forgave him, Yun Luofeng would definitely let him go for his sake. Unfortunately, Nangong Ching had guessed wrongly this time. The Nangong family had harmed Xiao Bai. They would not be able to atone for their sins even if they were to die 10,000 times. What's more, Nangong Uni saw through his thoughts with a single glance. He turned his head and ignored him. Not to mention that he had no feelings for his father. Even if he did, he would still stand by Yun Luofeng's side. Plop! Nangong Ching suddenly knelt on the ground, tears of regret streaming down his face. I won't ask for your forgiveness. I only hope that you can let me go on account of how well I've treated you in the past. Furthermore, using the soul spikes to deal with Lin Ruobai was the ancestral elder's idea. I wasn't the one who injured you. I'm innocent. Chapter 1129. Even now, Nangong Ching was still trying to absolve himself of his mistakes and wanted to push all the blame onto someone else. From the moment you thought I was a bastard, you were no longer my father. Nangong Uni's face revealed a cold smile. I won't feel any sympathy for you. Was he ruthless? Did he really not care about how well Nangong Ching treated him? No. It was because he understood Nangong Ching's personality. This man was vicious and merciless. He would not stop until he reached his goal. Now that the Nangong family had fallen in Yun Luofeng's hands, how could he let it go? No matter how much Nangong Ching loved him, it couldn't compare to his friendship with Yun Luofeng over the years. For Yun Luofeng, he would not be soft-hearted. Nangong Uni, Nangong Ching said angrily, are you really so heartless? I'm still your father. If you kill your father, won't you be struck by lightning? Nangong Uni wanted to continue speaking, but Yun Luofeng raised his hand and stopped her. You don't need to find trouble with Nangong. The young girl raised her eyebrows. Even if he pleads for you, I won't spare anyone from the three great families. Nangong Ching's face was ashen, his eyes filled with despair. Suddenly, the young girl's domineering voice appeared in everyone's mind. Those who obey me, you have the world. Those who defy me, you can walk through hell. If they submitted to her, with her strength, they could have a share of the world in the future. But if they defy her, they could only walk in that endless hell. Previously, you used soul nails to nail Xiao Bai to the wall, causing her to suffer great pain. Now, I will return this pain to you 1,000 times over. Yun Luofeng extended his hand towards Milk Tea. Milk Tea, give me the soul nails you just picked up. Milk Tea didn't know what Yun Luofeng wanted to do, but she still took out the soul nails. Use fire to burn these soul nails for a full 7 days, then soak them in poison lingji juice for 5 days. After drying them, nail these people to the pillars. After 49 days, their souls will fly away and scatter. These people had only used ordinary soul nails on Lin Ruobai, which could only consume her soul, causing her to suffer the pain of her soul being consumed. Moreover, it required hundreds of soul nails to have this effect. But after Yun Luofeng changed these soul nails, they were no longer like this. A single soul spike was enough to make them experience pain that was thousands of times worse than what Lin Ruobai had experienced. Lin Ruobai's soul was being consumed, and his strength was being locked away. Their souls, on the other hand, felt like they were in purgatory at all times. How could an ordinary person endure that kind of pain? Unfortunately, the purgatory was burning their souls, so they couldn't faint even if they wanted to. Chapter 1130. Nangong Lan's body softened and she fell to the ground. She opened her beautiful eyes in despair. Her eyes were empty and lifeless. Milk Tea, I'll leave the punishment for these people to you. Rat Empress, bring the Rat clan to watch over the other 2 families. I'll go back and treat Nangong first. I'll settle the score with the other 2 families later. News of what she had done to the Nangong nobles would soon reach those two families. Hence, she had asked the Rat Empress to lead the Rat Clan's troops to detain them. This was to prevent those people from escaping secretly. Hiss. When Yun Luofeng bent down to carry Nangong Yuni's body was pulled by her. He grimaced in pain. Yun Luofeng, are you still a woman? Can't you be gentler? Yun Luofeng glanced at him. There's no need to be gentle with you. Nangong Yuni's handsome face darkened, and he complained, you master and servant really have the same virtue. It's really like master, like pet, like pet. Hearing this, Yun Luofeng slightly narrowed his eyes. He used his palm to forcefully slap Nangong Yuni's broken bones. Nangong Yuni cried out in pain. Yun Luofeng. He gritted his teeth and called out. Nangong, you were injured by Nangong Lan to this extent. Yun Luofeng's lips curled into an evil smile. Where are the spiritual beasts I gave you? Nangong Yuni said embarrassedly, Nangong Lan used your disciple's life to threaten me. I had no choice but to take back the two spiritual beasts. You've studied in Hua Xia for so many years. Is your brain filled with glue? Yun Luofeng sneered. She threatened you and you took back the spiritual beasts. If capturing Xiao Bai was just to make me hand over the antidote, it wouldn't harm her life. Why can't you even understand this? Furthermore, Yun Luofeng paused. They couldn't kill Xiao Bai. Otherwise, they wouldn't have used the soul nails to restrain her. Nangong Yuni rubbed the back of his head. His face was full of shame. I didn't think that much in the moment. Remember, no matter what you do in the future, use your brain to think carefully. Don't be too impulsive. Yun Luofeng looked at Nangong again. You and Xiao Bai are both very important to me. I don't wish for anyone by my side to be injured, especially injuries that don't need to be. Nangong Yuni's own strength was not weak, and with the addition of the two spiritual beasts, he was actually beaten to such a state by Nangong Lan. Thank you. Just as Yun Luofeng was about to leave, she suddenly heard a voice coming from her shoulder, causing her to stop in her tracks. Nangong, she smiled, very soon, I will leave the limitless continent. At that time, I will wait for you on another continent. I will wait for you to become stronger and find me. Nangong Yuni's voice was filled with unswerving determination. All right, I'll definitely look for you. This was his promise to her. A lifetime commitment. After returning to the medical tower, Yun Luofeng began treating Nangong Yuni's injuries. Because Nangong Yuni's injuries were too severe, it would not be easy to treat him. Therefore, he estimated that it would take a few days before Nangong Yuni's injuries could recover. It was also at this time that Mu Chu, who had been sent by Yun Luofeng to train in the dragon pool, returned. Miss Yun, I've already retrieved the dragon scale from the mission you gave me. I wonder if I can now join your medical tower? Mu Chu's body swayed a little. Half of his face was stained with blood. One of his fingers revealed the eerie white bone, and his clothes were tattered. Chapter 1131. All right. Yun Luofeng nodded slightly as he looked at Mu Chu, who was standing in front of him. Go and rest first. I will get someone to treat your injuries. Also, come with me to the Wu family tomorrow. Mu Chu was startled. He looked at Yun Luofeng happily. Are you saying that you plan to bring me to save my sister tomorrow? He had just returned to Endless City and did not understand what had happened. He did not know how much of a commotion Yun Luofeng's actions had caused in Endless City today. Following the destruction of the Nangong clan, the three great clans were in a state of panic. Especially after they heard about Yun Luofeng's inhumane actions, they panicked and regretted their actions. Patriarch Wu, the OU family patriarch, was filled with endless regret. His face was filled with grief. I never thought that Yun Luofeng, that woman, would actually annihilate all the ancestral elders of our three great families by herself. What should we do now? Are we just going to sit here and wait for death? What should we do? Clan Master Wu let out a bitter laugh. His body softened and fell to the ground. His eyes were filled with despair and pain. What else can we do? Are we going to give up everything and escape? Even if we start all over again, it won't be difficult with our strength. It's better than dying here. the OU clan master said with determination. Indeed, starting all over again was better than dying here. Then let's leave now. It'll be too late if we're late. The Wu clan master gritted his teeth and stood up. His eyes flashed with determination. The two of them did not even plan to prepare anything and were about to leave in a hurry. However, at this moment, a panicked voice was heard. Master, something bad has happened. The people from the medical tower have surrounded the Wu clan. A servant stumbled over. He sounded like he was about to cry and his eyes were filled with anxiety. What? The Wu clan master's face turned pale. The medical tower is so fast. We're doomed. This time, we're definitely doomed. The OU clan master's eyes darkened. How is the OU clan? He had originally come to discuss how to deal with the medical tower with the Wu clan master. Who knew that Yun Luofeng would attack the Nangong clan? At first, they did not think much of it. After all, the elders were here. No matter how strong Yun Luofeng was, he would die in the Nangong clan. However, things didn't go according to plan. When they heard that all the ancestral elders had fallen into Yun Luofeng's hands, they began to panic. If they lost these ancestral elders, the three great clans would only amount to so much. The people from the medical tower also went to the OU clan. The servant's voice trembled. They saw that the OU clan lord wasn't there, so they burned the OU clan to the ground. What? Patriarch OU's body swayed a few times and he almost fell to the ground. He stared at the servant with an ashen face. Did you just say that my OU clan was burned down by the people of the medical tower? The OU clan's clan master's eyes were blood red at this moment. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked as if he wanted to eat someone alive. This scared the servant so much that his whole body trembled. What a good Yun Luofeng! She actually dared to do such an outrageous thing. She won't have a good death. The OU clan's master gnashed his teeth in hatred. If Yun Luofeng was in front of him, he would probably want to drink her blood and eat her flesh. Patriarch OU, Patriarch Wu sat paralyzed on the ground and asked in despair, this time, we've already lost. Moreover, they were defeated by a new force in Endless City. Chapter 1132. Patriarch OU sneered. His smile was sinister and terrifying, and a ruthless glint flashed in his eyes. That's not necessarily true. Today, after leaving the medical tower, I've asked my daughter to temporarily leave Endless City and go to her fiancé's side. My goal is to prevent her from being accidentally injured in this incident. If my daughter finds out that we've died at the hands of the medical tower, she'll definitely avenge us. Patriarch Wu's eyes dimmed. Even if OUYA managed to escape this time, so what if she avenged them in the end? She could no longer save their lives. Whoosh. At that moment, a crowd surged outside the door. Patriarch Wu, who was thinking of countermeasures, saw a group of people walking in from outside the courtyard, and his expression changed completely. The leader of the group was a young girl in white. Even the words peerless beauty were insufficient to describe her beauty. Patriarch Wu and Patriarch OU knew that their time was up. Their faces were extremely pale, and their bodies could not help but tremble. Mu Chu. Suddenly, Patriarch Wu caught a glimpse of the man standing next to Yun Luofeng. His expression changed abruptly, and he roared angrily, "You traitor, how dare you collude with Yun Luofeng? You want to harm our Wu family? We raised you and your sister for so many years. You're an ingrate." Yun Luofeng's evil eyes glanced at the furious Patriarch Wu, and he said casually, "He has been loyal to you for so many years, and he has already repaid you for raising him and his sister. Furthermore, you used his sister to threaten him, and you even wanted to marry her to a cripple. How is he going to settle this score with you?" Mu Chu's handsome face instantly darkened, and he clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were filled with anger as he stared coldly at Patriarch Wu. "You want to marry my sister to a cripple?" Patriarch Wu did not expect Yun Luofeng to know about this, and his old face was filled with astonishment. "That's right," he came back to his senses and said with a sneer, "I do want to marry her to a cripple, but what can I do about it? That cripple is willing to exchange an extremely precious medicinal herb for her. Your little bitch has been eating and drinking in my Wu family for so many years, Don't you think she needs to take revenge? Do I have to raise her for nothing? Boom. Mu Chu's anger erupted from the top of his head as he angrily said, freeloading? All these years, I've been a guard for the Wu family. Aside from food and clothing, what else have I received from the Wu family? We eat plain tea and eat plain food, and wear sackcloth clothes. But for so many years, we've never even mentioned our monthly allowance, and you're saying that we're freeloaders? When he thought of the grievances the siblings had suffered all these years, the rage in his heart couldn't help but surge out and spread out in a destructive manner. Mu Chu, how dare you? Facing Yun Luofeng, Patriarch Wu didn't dare to say anything. But Mu Chu was a member of the Wu clan, and he had always been loyal. Thus, he completely ignored Yun Luofeng's existence and glared at him. Who gave you the courage to say such words? If it weren't for the fact that you and your sister are homeless, I wouldn't have taken you in. Now that I've accepted the two of you, you still dare to make other requests. I won't even give you a copper coin, let alone a monthly salary. That's right. In Patriarch Wu's heart, he was already exceptionally benevolent to give the siblings a meal, yet he still dared to ask for a monthly salary. Chapter 1133. Who has given him the face to say something like this? Mu Chu, you must remember that the Wu family has no lack of guards. However, not only are you not grateful to the Wu family, you're even speaking in such a shameless manner. You'd better think about how much the Wu family has done for you. Yun Luofeng crossed his arms over his chest and his lips curled into an evil smile. She did not speak but watched to see how Mu Chu would deal with the Wu family. Mu Chu's eyes slowly filled with disappointment. He had previously been grateful to the Wu family for adopting him. That was why he had obeyed Yun Luofeng and made such a request. However, the Wu family did not seem to remember his years of protection. Instead, they thought that he had received the Wu family's kindness. That year, in order to protect my cousin's sister, your daughter, I nearly lost my life at the hands of spiritual beast. However, I've never used this kindness to blackmail the Wu family. I've always played my part as a guard. Master Wu scoffed coldly at the disappointed Mu Chu. You protected her willingly, I didn't force you. What right do you have to blackmail the Wu family with this? Mu Chu shook his head. He could no longer speak. Perhaps he should have given up from the moment the Wu family had poisoned his sister in order to force him to go to the medical tower to get close to Yun Luofeng. TSK, TSK, a tree that doesn't want its bark will surely die. A shameless man is invincible. A little girl in fiery red robes took 2 steps forward and stood next to Yun Luofeng. Her tender little face was curled into a mocking smile and her large, bright eyes were filled with mockery. I've lived for so many years and this is the first time I've seen such a shameless person. Master Wu's expression was extremely ugly. He glared at Mu Chu. What are you still standing there for? Get your ass over here right now. Mu Chu did not move. He stood quietly next to Yun Luofeng and stared expressionlessly at Master Wu. Master Wu's expression became more and more unsightly. He turned to Yun Luofeng and said, Yun Luofeng, you clearly heard what I said to him just now. That's right, Mu Chu is a member of our Wu family. He is also a spy I sent to your medical tower. If you keep him by your side, he will definitely be a threat to you. Since you've betrayed the Wu family, I won't let you off easily either. A ruthless glint flashed across Master Wu's eyes as he glanced at Mu Chu evilly. Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin, his deep black eyes filled with a smile. I already knew about this matter. What did you say? Patriarch Wu was shocked. He did not believe that Mu Chu would have the guts to reveal his identity, unless he didn't want to save his sister. From the first day Mu Chu entered the medical tower, he had already confessed everything. So, I already knew that he was a member of the Wu family. Yun Luofeng's face held an evil smile. As for how I knew that you wanted to marry his sister off to a cripple, that was because I had sent people to keep an eye on her. I have also cured the poison in her body. Patriarch Wu staggered a few more steps back and fell on his chair. Impossible. This is impossible. He didn't believe that he would lose everything. Mu Chu, Yun Luofeng gently raised his eyes. I'll leave the Wu family to you. I hope that you won't disappoint me. Mu Chu's expression was slightly complicated, but he still replied respectfully, "Yes, Tower Master." Seeing the people from the medical tower surrounding the Wu family, Patriarch Wu's body trembled and he shouted hoarsely, "Yun Luofeng, if you dare to accept Mu Chu, you will regret it. This boy has betrayed me now and he will betray you in the future. Just wait and see, ha 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 ha." Chapter 1134. A light flashed across Yun Luofeng's eyes as she fell into deep thought. After a long while, she lifted her head to look at Mu Chu and asked, "Have you made the arrangements for your sister?" Mu Chu's eyes filled with gratitude when he heard this. "I really don't know how to thank you. If it weren't for your help, my sister and I would still be under the Wu family's control. You don't have to thank me. I only need you to repay me with your own power." Yun Luofeng smiled calmly. "I'm different from the master of the Wu family. I won't restrict your freedom or deduct your monthly allowance. However, I only have one request. You are never allowed to betray the medical tower." A murderous intent flashed across her eyes as she spoke. A powerful aura spread from her body, so powerful that it made it hard for one to breathe. "If I find out that you have the slightest intention of betrayal, you know what I will do." Mu Chu's heart suddenly trembled. With a determined look on his face, he said, "Tower Master, I will never betray the medical tower." "All right, you may leave." Yun Luofeng waved her hand and leaned tiredly against the chair. She had a lazy expression on her face, and her eyes were gently closed. "Yes." Seeing Yun Luofeng's tired look, Mu Chu wanted to say more, but in the end, he cupped his fists and retreated. The moment he left, Yun Luofeng opened her eyes and rubbed the space between her brows. Her voice also carried a hint of exhaustion. "Yun Xiao, I'll be able to find you very soon." She had already broken through to become a holy spirit and was now qualified to head to another mainland. Now, she only needed to wait for a while. At this moment, in a luxurious palace far from Endless City, a man was half leaning on his head. His fine black hair cascaded down the bed like a waterfall. The man only wore a red cloak under the gauze curtains. His fair body was faintly discernible. He was so beautiful that it was indescribable. If one were to use a common term to describe this man, it would be coquettish slut. "Master." A maidservant walked in from outside the door and reported respectfully, "News has come from Endless City. The medical tower has destroyed the 3 aristocratic families." "Oh." Hearing this, the man raised his head slightly. His hair that covered half of his face scattered to the side, revealing the cinnabar dot between his eyebrows, making him look even more seductive than a woman. If such a man were to disguise himself as a woman, no one would doubt his gender. "Her name is Yun Luofeng." A sense of interest flashed in the man's eyes and his lips curled into a smile. "Interesting, this woman is very interesting. I haven't seen such an interesting woman in a long time. By the way, what happened to that old man called Lin Yu?" The maidservant joined her fists and said, "Ever since Yun Luofeng chased Lin Yu out of the medical tower, he has been waiting for an opportunity to take revenge." "Master, should we stop him?" This old man named Lin Yu was the one who had humiliated Yun Luofeng at the banquet and believed that he would definitely become one of the higher-ups of the Tower of Medicine. Unfortunately, he simply did not know that Yun Luofeng was the Tower Master of the medical tower. As a result, he was kicked out of the medical tower by Yun Luofeng and joined this faction. "Don't worry about him. If he has the ability, let him take his own revenge." The man gently narrowed his eyes and the smile on his lips was seductive. "However, that woman is not someone he can handle. Besides, I had asked him to go to the medical tower to get close to Yun Luofeng, yet he had messed it up and even tried to shirk his responsibility. I don't know if he's stupid or if he thinks that I'm stupid." Chapter 1135. The man turned his head slightly. His hair covered the side of his face, revealing his seductive red lips. "You can leave first. Report to me if there's any news of Yun Luofeng." "Yes, master." The maidservant cupped her fists and left. After the maidservant closed the door, the man slowly sat up on the bed. His long and narrow almond-shaped eyes carried an indecipherable smile. "I heard that Yun Luofeng's disciple's soul has been injured. In order to heal his soul, he must consume the fruit of the soul. The man gently stroked his chin and smiled. So, Tian Luo, bring me the fruit of the soul. I'm going to hold a doctor's meeting. We'll use the fruit of the soul as a reward. Yun Luofeng will certainly be tempted to come. He fell silent for a moment before he continued. Also, let Lin Yu hold the fruit of the soul. That day, I'd sent this old fart to the medical tower as a spy to find out Yun Luofeng's power. Who would have thought that he'd offend her? Since that's the case, I'll use this old thing to send him to Yun Luofeng and let her play with him. In the room, a shadow suddenly flashed out. After he cupped his fists towards the man on the bed, he instantly disappeared from the room. The man stared in the direction of the shadow guard's departure and seemed to be mumbling to himself, Yun Luofeng, the one chosen by the divine doctor Zhu Qian. I'd like to see just how powerful you are. If Yun Luofeng could hear the man's words, he would certainly be extremely shocked. He actually knows that I've received Zhu Qian's inheritance. Then, where did he come from? The man paused and a seductive smile appeared on his beautiful face. If my guess is correct, that disciple of hers should be from there. I don't know if staying by her side is a blessing or a curse. However, the one chosen by Zhu Qian will not fall because of such a small difficulty. I believe that she can go far. A few days later, a piece of news spread across the entire mainland and caused a sensation. The Ji family was the most mysterious force in the land of infinity. It was said that the master of the Ji family was very young and as beautiful as a flower. She looked like a woman, but her power was extraordinary and she was cruel and merciless. Rumor had it that the master of the Ji family had broken through to the Holy Spirit rank and her power was comparable to that of the royal family. Now, the Ji family wanted to use the soul fruit as revenge and wanted to hold a medical conference. This conference had shocked countless countries. In order to obtain the soul fruit, all the countries had sent their expert. The reason was none other than the fact that the soul fruit could enhance a cultivator's soul. It was a peerless treasure that could only be chanced upon. However, as Master Ji didn't like to meet outsiders, the medical conference wasn't held in Ji City, where Ji family was located. Instead, it was held in the neighboring city. As the host of the conference, Lin Yu received countless bootlicking from the doctors who had arrived. Under the endless praise of these people, he was already so happy that he couldn't tell north from south. At the same time, in the Ji family's residence, a man leaned lazily against the back of the bed on a luxurious bed. His foxy eyes glanced at Tian Luo, who was standing in front of him, and asked, "How did it go?" Reporting to Master, doctors from various countries have already come to participate in the conference. Where's Yun Luofeng? The man narrowed his eyes. This Yun Luofeng was his true target this time. Chapter 1136. She's not here yet. Tian Luo's head was lowered the entire time. His grim voice was filled with respect and no one could see his expression clearly. The man's lips curled into a faint smile, displaying his natural charm. I can wait. We'll hold the meeting once Yun Luofeng has arrived. Also, how's Lin Yu's performance? Flushed with success. These 4 words summed up Lin Yu's recent situation. Let him be. The man smiled faintly. Lin Yu is full of lies, he cannot be allowed to live. Previously, he had humiliated Yun Luofeng in front of everyone. Treat this as a toy that I've sent to Yun Luofeng. As for this fruit of the soul, it's a gift from me to him. Tian Luo lowered his head without a word, but his heart was already filled with sympathy for Lin Yu. Who had asked Lin Yu to make 2 fatal mistakes? First, he had humiliated Yun Luofeng in front of everyone. Next, he had pushed all the blame for his mistakes onto Yun Luofeng, spouting a string of lies. Master hates it when people lie. Based on this alone, Lin Yu must not be allowed to live. Tian Luo, continue to keep an eye on Lin Yu. Report to me when Yun Luofeng arrives. As you wish. Tian Luo joined his fists. His body was like a gentle breeze as he disappeared from where he stood, Spirit City. It was extraordinarily bustling. Lin Yu was all smiles as he welcomed the cultivators who came and went. He was truly flushed with success. How many years has it been? How many years has it been since I've felt so pleased with myself? If I had not been lucky enough to join the Ji family, I probably would not have received such treatment. Yun Luofeng. When you had chased me out of the medicine tower that day, did you ever think that I would end up like this? When he thought of the task that the Ji family had given him, his elderly face wrinkled into a chrysanthemum flower as he smiled. In Lin Yu's eyes, Master had asked him to complete this task because he had taken a liking to his power. Otherwise, with so many people in the Ji family, why would he have asked him to host the meeting instead of someone else? Just then, Lin Yu's gaze pierced through the crowd and landed on a peerless figure on the street. The young girl's lips curled into a languid smile as her evil eyes swept across the crowd. Her snow-white robes, coupled with her peerless features, made it impossible for anyone to ignore her. Yun Luofeng. Lin Yu gritted his teeth and burst into laughter. I didn't think that you'd come to participate in the doctor's conference as well. However, you've fallen into my hands this time. I won't let you off. News of the Tower of Medicine's actions in Endless City had yet to spread. As such, Lin Yu did not know that the young girl had already broken through to become a holy spirit. Otherwise, he would definitely not dare to do something that he would regret for the rest of his life. As for how that seductive man from the Ji family knew about this, that was because there were spies from the Ji family in Endless City, so Yun Luofeng's actions could not be hidden from him. Yun Luofeng seemed to feel that someone was staring at her. She looked up, and in an instant, a pair of eyes filled with anger and hatred fell into her eyes. Does this count as enemies meeting on a narrow road? Yun Luofeng rubbed his nose, his evil smile carrying a hint of helplessness. However, Lin Yu's power was not enough to make her feel fearful. Lin Yu's eyes were blood red. Those who did not know the truth would think that Yun Luofeng was the person who had killed her father. Perhaps Yun Luofeng had long forgotten what had happened that day, but he could never forget the humiliation of being chased out of the medicine tower. Chapter 1137. Lord Lin Yu, this young lady is... The doctors who had come to participate in the conference were very sharp-eyed. They noticed Lin Yu's blood-red eyes and turned their attention towards Yun Luofeng in unison. A brainless person. Lin Yu scoffed icily as a cold smile hung on the corners of his lips. He placed his hands behind his back and walked towards Yun Luofeng. He then raised his chin and spoke in a domineering manner. Yun Luofeng, I never thought that you'd end up like this. Of course, if you beg me, I'll let you participate in the doctor's conference. Yun Luofeng's evil eyes swept towards Lin Yu and the corners of his lips twitched. Qing Mu, take it out. Hearing this, the elderly man next to Yun Luofeng produced an invitation from his lapel and placed it in front of Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng took the invitation and stared coldly at Lin Yu. There was a sense of disdain in his eyes. This is an invitation from the Ji family. I wonder if the words of the master of the Ji family or your orders are more important in this doctor's conference. Lin Yu's eyes narrowed. He never thought that Yun Luofeng would embarrass him on the spot. Instantly, his elderly face sank. Yun Luofeng, I'm in charge of this doctor's conference. I must decide whether you can obtain the fruit of the soul. If you kneel down and beg me now, I'll let you go. Otherwise... He narrowed his eyes and a cold light flashed across his eyes. Get out of my way. Qing Yang's little face turned cold when she saw Lin Yu's rudeness. She stood in front of Yun Luofeng and held her sword horizontally in front of her. I'm talking to your master. What's a little girl like you interrupting? Get out of my way. Lin Yu frowned impatiently. His voice was filled with a cold light. Qing Yang's little face turned frosty. She used the sword in her hand to block Lin Yu, who was about to step forward, preventing him from getting close to Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng stood behind Qing Yang. Her dark eyes were filled with an evil smile and the corners of her lips were curled into a beautiful angle. Just then, a man's voice rang out from outside the crowd. This voice was so soft and numbing that it was very enjoyable to listen to it. I've heard that the master of the Ji family has decided on the participants of this doctor's conference. No one has the right to change the participants without permission. I wonder who gave you the guts to overstep your authority. Behind the bustling crowd, A scarlet robe caught everyone's attention. He was a pitilessly beautiful man. How beautiful was she? Even the most beautiful rose couldn't compare to this man's seductiveness. His red robe fluttered in the wind, and his hair, which was like a waterfall, fluttered in the wind. His gorgeous red lips curled up slightly, and his smile was enough to turn all living things upside down. In particular, there was a cinnabar dot between the man's eyebrows. The red was absolutely gorgeous, and it set off his coquettish temperament incisively and vividly. Yun Luofeng lifted his head and looked at the man who was walking over slowly. A look of surprise flashed in his eyes. This was the first time in her life that she had seen such a beautiful man. However, compared to a man's flirtatiousness, she preferred Yun Xiao's coldness and loyalty. Therefore, her astonishment only lasted for a brief moment before her eyes regained their calmness without the slightest fluctuation. "Who are you?" Lin Yu's expression sank. "This is the Ji family's business, it has nothing to do with you." In the dark, Tian Luo sneered disdainfully when he heard Lin Yu's words. His master's position in the Ji family was unparalleled. The funny thing was that he had the audacity to question his master's identity. He even claimed that his master had no right to meddle in other people's business. Chapter 1138. Well, based on Lin Yu's abilities, he did not have the right to meet his master. "You're not qualified to know my identity." The man's long and narrow almond-shaped eyes swept towards Lin Yu. His voice was cold and merciless while his pitilessly beautiful features were filled with a gloomy air. His gaze was so eerie that it made one's heart tremble. Perhaps Lin Yu was frightened out of his wits. His entire body trembled and he did not have the courage to meet the man's gaze. It was as if this man was like a demon god from hell. One look at him and they would be consigned to eternal damnation. "Just you wait." His eyes darkened a few times, and he coldly snorted as he flung his robe. "I indeed don't have the right to refuse you, but the fruit of soul is up to me. If I don't give it to you, you can't get it." After saying his piece, Lin Yu flung his robes fiercely before he turned around and stormed off. The man narrowed his almond-shaped eyes and stared coldly in the direction where Lin Yu had left. His red lips curled into a mocking smile. He seemed to be talking to Yun Luofeng, but also seemed to be talking to himself. For this kind of mad dog, rather than letting him bite you, it's better to beat him to death. Yun Luofeng glanced at the flirtatious man beside him. "I'm not a mad dog, so I won't fight with a mad dog. Moreover, if I fight with a mad dog, the only one who will suffer is you." The coquettish man's gaze finally turned towards Yun Luofeng. He gently raised his snow-white chin, his wild eyes staring deeply at the young girl standing in front of him. "Don't you feel angry that he treated you like that?" Yun Luofeng shrugged his shoulders. "You've already said that he's a mad dog. As a human, how can I bicker with a mad dog?" "Oh." The man raised his eyebrows, and the interest in his eyes intensified. "It seems that your temper is not bad. I have underestimated you." He had initially thought that she would not miss the opportunity to teach him a harsh lesson if he presented Lin Yu to her. However, he never expected that this young girl would be so broad-minded. He had gauged the heart of a gentleman with his own mean measure. Who knew where those rumors from the outside world came from? Didn't they say she was narrow-minded? He would never let himself suffer any grievances. If anyone insulted her, would she attack them without saying a word? Who was the one who spread these rumors? Why hadn't he noticed? Ah! Just as the man's admiration for Yun Luofeng grew, Lin Yu's shriek rang out from the mansion not too far away. "Where did so many gold-seeking mice come from? Someone, get these gold-seeking mice off my body. Help! Don't bite my ear." Then, a hubbub of noise could be heard. Perhaps the gold-seeking mice had all retreated, so they regained their composure. The man's lips twitched. "I take back what I said. Broad-minded." If this woman had a big heart, then he would cut off his head and let Tian Luo kick it like a ball. Achoo! Tian Luo, who was hiding in the dark, couldn't help but sneeze. He rubbed his nose. He didn't know why, but he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. The mansion turned from its initial clamor into silence. Lin Yu, who had already left, rushed out angrily and glared at Yun Luofeng with fiery eyes. Did you release the gold-seeking mice just now? Yun Luofeng's evil eyes swept over him. Evidence. Aside from you, who else would do such a wicked thing? Lin Yu was so angry that he wanted to kill someone. He never thought that Yun Luofeng would be so sinister. Unfortunately, he couldn't find any evidence at all. Chapter 1139. Yes. Yun Luofeng nodded seriously and pointed at the seductive man next to her. Him. The man suddenly felt as if there was a fishbone stuck in his throat. His seductive face turned awkwardly towards Yun Luofeng. This little girl wants me to take the blame. Woman, we've only met once. There's no need for you to frame me. Even though he could crush Lin Yu as easily as crushing an ant, that did not mean he was willing to take the blame. I don't care which one of you is framing me, I'll show you what I'm capable of. A vicious light flashed across Lin Yu's eyes as he gritted his teeth and spoke. The seductive man's almond-shaped eyes gradually darkened. He had lived for so many years, yet no one had ever threatened him like this. What you're capable of? I'd like to see it for myself. He curled his lips into a particularly sinister smile. If you have the ability, show me what you're capable of. The man slowly walked towards Lin Yu. His aura, which was like a monstrous sea, spread outwards. In the face of this ocean-like aura, Lin Yu was like a small boat. All the man needed to do was stir the waves and he would be completely annihilated. You. Lin Yu's elderly face drained of color as he stumbled back. Are you threatening me? It's not a threat, it's a warning. The man laughed maniacally. Scram. Otherwise, I'll make sure your blood splatters here and now. Lin Yu was so frightened that he almost wet his pants. Without waiting for the man to speak, he immediately scrambled out of the room. When he was 100 meters away from the man, he felt as if his life had been spared. A tiny fly almost dirted my clothes. The man raised his slender fingers and flicked at his clothes. His tightly furrowed brows were filled with disgust. His expression made it seem as if there were germs wherever Lin Yu had stood. Yun Luofeng raised his brows and stared at the seductive man with a forced smile. After a long pause, the man turned towards Yun Luofeng. His slightly raised brows were filled with a wild and domineering air. My name is Zhou. Yun Luofeng narrowed her eyes. There's no need for me to introduce myself. I believe that you already know who I am. Ever since the man had guessed that she was the one who had brought the gold-seeking mice, she understood that he had known about her identity. Only the people of Endless City knew about these things. Even Lin Yu, who had been chased out of the Tower of Healing, would not know about the forces in her hands. The man laughed. His smile was so beautiful that it could cause the downfall of countries and cities. Yun Luofeng, the Tower Master of the Medical Tower, the current ruler of Endless City, a young girl who is not even 20 years old. The corners of Ji Zhoutian's lips curled into a seductive smile once again. It's true that hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. I never thought that you would be as shameless as the rumors say. Yun Luofeng smiled and said, Same to you. No matter how shameless I am, I can't compare to you. If it weren't for you accidentally revealing that you knew me, I don't know how long you would have hidden yourself. Haha. Ji Zhoutian chuckled. Interesting. It's been a long time since I've been so interested in someone. As expected of that fellow's chosen successor, Yun Luofeng, I, Ji Zhoutian, haven't admired many people in my life. You're the second. His lips curled into a smile. So, I'm definitely making friends with you. The first person he had admired was the powerhouse Zhu Qian from 10,000 years ago. Zhu Qian, who had once stood at the peak of this mainland but had died an unknown death. Chapter 1140. I'll accept you as a friend. Yun Luofeng extended her hand with a devilish smile. Her black eyes were bright, so bright that Ji Zhoutian's figure was reflected in them. One more friend meant one more way out. Moreover, Ji Zhoutian's strength wasn't bad and his character didn't make her dislike him, so why wouldn't she accept him? Ji Zhoutian held Yun Luofeng's hand, the smile on his beautiful face becoming even wider. Yun Luofeng, to tell you the truth, you don't seem like a woman. Yun Luofeng raised her eyebrows. You don't seem like a man either. Ji Zhoutian's voice became sluggish and he shook his head helplessly. This woman wouldn't be satisfied until she angered him to death, right? Tian Luo looked at the deflated Ji Zhoutian in shock. His cold expression instantly cracked. Ever since he had followed Master, he had never seen Master suffer any losses. But now, he had suffered losses at Yun Luofeng's hands 3 times. This woman, could it be that she was used to restrain his master? Moreover, if it had been anyone else who dared to speak to his master like this, their corpse would have been long gone. But Yun Luofeng had survived. Tian Luo wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and looked at the unreasonable scene in front of him in disbelief. It's your first time here, so you probably don't have a place to stay. If you don't mind, you can stay in my courtyard. No need, I'll go find an inn myself. Yun Luofeng shook her head and rejected Ji Zhoutian's good intentions. Ji Zhoutian's lips curled up. Recently, the inn has run out of empty rooms. Even if you look for one, you won't be able to find a place to stay. Why don't you come to my place and stay for a few days? It would also be convenient for him to observe Zhu Qian's successor from a close distance. He wanted to see if this woman really had the ability to bring Zhu Qian's legacy to glory. Yun Luofeng fell silent. After a long time, she said helplessly, "Then I can only disturb you for a few days." Ji Zhoutian, who had just suffered a setback at Yun Luofeng's hands, saw the young girl's helpless expression and his originally unresigned mood instantly calmed down. In fact, his mood had never been better. Tian Luo's sweat flowed more and more. He didn't know why, but he felt as if his master had changed into a different person. If he hadn't followed his master all the time, he would definitely have suspected that he had been replaced by someone else. Miss Qing Yang cautiously pulled Yun Luofeng back. She looked at Ji Zhoutian vigilantly and said, "We have just met this man. If we follow him, won't it be too unsafe?" Yun Luofeng faintly smiled. "Trust me, nothing will happen." It was indeed her first day meeting Ji Zhoutian, but she had a very familiar feeling. Even she did not know where this feeling came from. However, she knew that Ji Zhoutian would not hurt her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have made friends with someone she had just met. Qing Yang did not continue to speak, but Little Mo's voice came from her soul. "Master, don't be bewitched by his beauty. This man looks like a coquettish slut. One look and you can tell that he's not from a decent family. How can he compare to Yun Xiao? Pure men like Yun Xiao have long gone extinct. You mustn't throw away the watermelon to pick up the sesame seed." 3 black lines appeared on Yun Luofeng's forehead. Did she look like the kind of person who would abandon someone after using them? Moreover, his heart had already been occupied by Yun Xiao. No one else could squeeze in. Little Mo seemed to have heard Yun Luofeng's voice and continued to speak. "You and Yun Xiao have known each other for 5 or 6 years, but you still haven't given him a status. Even your first time was because you were trying to save Yun Xiao. So, I can't help but worry." Chapter 1141. Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin. Did she really look like someone who would abandon someone after using them? It looked like she really should get married to Yun Xiao first. But what made her feel helpless was that she still didn't know where Yun Xiao was. "Master, you've already eaten Yun Xiao clean. Don't be the kind of beast that old master described you to be, who pulls up his pants and ignores people." If Yun Luofeng had met another man, he wouldn't have been so nervous. But the man in front of him was too strong. He was so strong that he couldn't see through his strength. How could he not be worried for Yun Xiao? What if this man took advantage of Yun Xiao's absence to steal from Master? As Yun Xiao's loyal protector, he had to remind Master at all times not to be bewitched by this flirtatious slut. After all, a good man like Yun Xiao was really extinct. Yun Luofeng didn't pay attention to Xiao Mo. Instead, he was thinking that the next time he met Yun Xiao, he must get married first. Otherwise, everyone would think that she was the kind of beast that would pull up her pants and ignore people. Thinking about Yun Xiao's cold and perfect face, Yun Luofeng's lips couldn't help but curve slightly. After not seeing him for a few months, she really missed him. "I wonder how Yun Xiao is doing recently. On another mainland. In a valley somewhere, a man seemed to feel the longing from afar. He raised his head and gazed at the azure sky. His cold face gradually melted and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. It's been almost a month. Based on Qin Yuan's speed, he should be reaching the continent of no return soon. In a luxurious mansion, a group of lavishly dressed maids rushed out when they saw Ji Zhoutian return. In an instant, they served tea and massaged his shoulders and back in one go. The division of labor was clear. Ji Zhoutian took the tea from the maid and took a small sip. He frowned and smashed the teacup in his hand on the ground. He spat out the tea in his mouth. Who brewed the tea today? There were too few tea leaves, it wasn't bitter enough. There was one less step in the brewing process, it wasn't fragrant enough. Also, who allowed you to boil the tea leaves from yesterday? I only drink fresh tea leaves. The maidservants were so frightened that they all knelt on the ground, trembling. Reporting to Master, the master in charge of brewing tea has temporarily returned to his hometown. This one has just been hired, so she has made a mistake. Please forgive her, Master. Forget it. I have a good temperament today, so I'll let him go. Ji Zhoutian relaxed his brows. Steward, send someone to tidy up the wing next to my room and arrange for Miss Yun to move in. Hearing this, the servant girls wiped the cold sweat from their foreheads. The master loved to drink tea. Every day, the first thing he did when he returned to the residence was to taste tea. However, the master was exceptionally picky. If he was dissatisfied with something, it wouldn't be as simple as a punishment. But why did master let go of that tea maker so easily today? Was it because of the young lady that his master had brought back? The maidservants glanced at Yun Luofeng out of the corner of their eyes, and their eyes were filled with amazement. They had never seen such a beautiful woman before. Standing together with their master, they could truly be described as a perfect match, peerless in this world. Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. Ji Zhoutian, do you like to drink tea? Tea and wine, I can't do without either. Ji Zhoutian said arrogantly. Yun Luofeng smiled and didn't say anything else. He followed the steward. Qing Yang and the others also hurriedly followed beside Yun Luofeng, walking quickly towards the residence. Chapter 1142. It was night. The night was dark like water. Yun Luofeng had just pushed the door open when she saw Ji Zhoutian sitting in her room. He was holding a small wine glass in his hand and gently swirling it. Don't you know that there is a difference between men and women? What are you doing in my room in the middle of the night? She leaned against the door frame and looked at the man sitting in the room with a faint smile on her face. The man's clothes were half open, revealing his snow-white and attractive skin. Under the moonlight, his skin emitted a seductive light. It had to be said that this man really had the capital to charm people. Every frown and smile revealed his seductive nature. Is there a problem with your hand? Ji Zhoutian glanced at Yun Luofeng's right hand and raised his eyebrows. Yun Luofeng was stunned and subconsciously touched her palm. The smile on her face did not diminish. That day, because I forcefully increased my strength, it caused my right hand to be crippled. If her right hand had only been seriously injured and crippled, with her medical skills, she would have been able to cure it 100%. However, this was the result of forcefully increasing her strength. Even little Mo might not have a way to cure it. I know something that can cure your arm. Ji Zhoutian glanced at Yun Luofeng. The sacred water of the Sacred Maiden clan can reconstruct your tibia. Your arm can also be healed without treatment. Sacred water? Yun Luofeng was stunned. Hearing these two words, she suddenly remembered the sacred water that she had obtained from Lin Ruobai's father. They were both sacred water, but she knew clearly that the sacred water in her hands did not have the ability to reconstruct tibia. Where is the Sacred Maiden clan? Yun Luofeng asked with a frown. Aren't there people from the Sacred Maiden clan by your side? Ji Zhoutian slowly stood up and smiled evilly. That's all I have to say. If you want to cure your arm, you can only rely on your own efforts. I won't help you. He would only provide her with clues, but he would not help her. Yun Luofeng was just about to ask when Ji Zhoutian's figure disappeared into thin air. In the quiet room, only the sound of the night breeze could be heard. As for the seductive man who had just been sitting in the room, it was as if he had never appeared. Little Mo, what is the origin of this sacred maiden clan? Yun Luofeng gently stroked her chin and pondered for a while before asking. After a long time, Little Mo's voice came from his soul. I've heard of the Holy Maiden tribe before. It's a very mysterious tribe. Anyone who was selected to enter the Sacred Maiden tribe was not allowed to marry. In the past, the Sacred Maiden tribe was very powerful. I don't know what the situation of the Sacred Maiden tribe is now, but I can tell you clearly that the Sacred Maiden tribe is not in the continent of No Hui. Little Mo, he said that someone from the Sacred Maiden tribe is beside me. Do you know who he is talking about? This. Little Mo hesitated for a moment. Master, if you want to cure your arm, you don't necessarily need the holy water of the Sacred Maiden tribe. I have other ways to help you as long as you give me time. In this world, there is nothing I can't do. Little Mo's voice was full of confidence. He clearly did not want Yun Luofeng to have dealings with the Sacred Maiden tribe. Yun Luofeng naturally understood the meaning behind his words. He smiled and said, "You don't want me to go find the Holy Maiden tribe?" "Yes," Little Mo answered honestly. "Those people from the Sacred Maiden tribe are very inexplicable. If they take a fancy to you and want you to join the Sacred Maiden tribe, what will happen to Yun Xiao?" "Master, give me some time. I'll think of something. I will never let you deal with those people." Chapter 1143. As the doctor's meet was being held in the Chancellor's Palace, the entire Chancellor's Palace was bustling with noise and excitement. Yun Luofeng had just walked into the main hall of the Chancellor's Palace when he saw Lin Yu, who was beaming from ear to ear. Lin Yu also saw Yun Luofeng. A vicious glint flashed across his eyes and his lips curled into a mocking smile. "Yun Luofeng, I never thought that you would dare to come here. Since you're now in my territory, you'll soon have no response from heaven or earth." He gritted his teeth in hatred. Thinking about what Yun Luofeng had done to him, he wanted to tear her to pieces. Unfortunately, Yun Luofeng was holding on to the invitation, so he could not chase this woman out. "Yun Luofeng." Just then, a cold voice rang out from beside Yun Luofeng. As he turned his head, he saw a woman dressed in green walking towards him. This woman couldn't be considered a devastatingly beautiful woman, but she gave off an exceptionally comfortable feeling. Her beauty was a little special, and her fine black hair cascaded down her shoulders like a waterfall. She had a friendly and polite smile on her face, and her eyes were bright and full of expression. Qingmu glanced at the woman walking towards Yun Luofeng and said in a low voice, "She's Princess Qing Shuang from the Flowing Moon Empire. Who would have thought that she would also participate in this doctor's conference?" Princess Qing Shuang. Yun Luofeng was stunned for a moment before he remembered who this Princess Qing Shuang was. She had sent someone to congratulate him on his second uncle's wedding. That was how Yun Luofeng had found out about the legendary Princess Qing Shuang. Princess Qing Shuang smiled. "That day, I wanted to see you personally, but something came up and I could only send someone. I hope you don't mind." She paused for a moment before continuing, "This time, I knew that you would definitely come to participate in the doctor's conference, so I also came here to see you." "See me?" Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and his lips curled into a smile. "Why do you want to see me?" Princess Qing Shuang smiled. "I just want to know what kind of person the woman who was in the limelight at the international competition is. Now that I've met her, she's exactly what I imagined." Just as the two of them were talking, a laugh came from the side. "Princess Frost, I didn't expect you to see Miss Yun first. I'm still one step behind you." As soon as he finished speaking, the man walked out from behind the crowd. He was dressed in a brocade robe, looking handsome and confident. His eyes were full of smiles. "Your Majesty Lan." Greenwood nodded towards Lan. Lan nodded and turned his gaze to Yun Luofeng. "Miss Yun, long time no see." He had a smile on his face as his gaze fell on Yun Luofeng. This man was the prince of the Peerless Empire, and Lan, whom he had met in the International League tournament. Chapter 1144. The funny thing was, he still didn't know the reason. The reason why he could host this medical conference was because of Ji Jotian's secret. It was precisely because he knew nothing. That was why he made an irreparable mistake in the end. Our Ji clan's clan leader respects doctors the most. That's why he held this medical conference this time around. His goal is to unearth peerless geniuses from doctors. However, if he doesn't care about the matters of the outside world, as long as you are a doctor, you will receive an invitation from him. As a result, some people will be able to sneak through and participate in the medical conference with that kind of virtue. As Lin Yu spoke, his eyes kept drifting towards Yun Luofeng. Clearly, the person he was talking about was Yun Luofeng. Everyone's eyes turned towards Lin Yu in unison when they recalled his fight with Yun Luofeng on the street. Their eyes were filled with sympathy and pity. Offending Lin Yu is equivalent to offending the Ji family. This young girl's days from now on will not be easy. What? Did you offend someone from the Ji family? An Lan raised his eyebrows and looked at Yun Luofeng with a faint smile. It seems that you really get into trouble easily. First, you offended the Tianhui Empire in the tournament, and now you offended the Ji family here. It seems that no matter where you go, you will make a group of enemies. Yun Luofeng shrugged his shoulders, his face filled with helplessness. I don't want to be enemies with anyone, but this group of people just likes to find me. Her voice was neither soft nor soft, and it fell right into everyone's ears. Lin Yu grew increasingly furious as he glared daggers at Yun Luofeng. In the eyes of those who did not know the truth, they would think that Yun Luofeng had an irreconcilable blood feud with him. At this moment, the entire hall fell silent. Everyone's gaze turned towards the door, towards the man with peerless elegance. This man was so beautiful that it made people's hearts beat faster. There was a cinnabar dot between his eyebrows, and he was extremely enchanting. His clothes were half open, and his snow-white skin was like white jade that emitted a pure white light. It was extremely dazzling. In the hall, the eyes of the unmarried women were filled with amazement. They stared at the peerless man like hungry wolves. If it weren't for the fact that they wanted to maintain their composure, they might have already pounced on him. The man ignored everyone's gaze and walked to Yun Luofeng's side. Why didn't you wait for me? His long and narrow eyes stared unblinkingly at Yun Luofeng as he asked. Yun Luofeng smiled. Why should I wait for you? Ji Jotian's voice suddenly disappeared. Helplessness could be seen on his beautiful face. He did take her in, but she came to participate in the doctor's conference without saying a word, completely abandoning him. Chapter 1145. Ji Jotian raised his lips into a smile. He flicked his sleeves and sat down in front of everyone. His enchanting red robe fluttered in the breeze. He supported half of his face with his fist, and there was an indescribable charm between his slightly raised eyebrows. Today, I will stay here. I want to see who dares to leave with me. The man's voice was wild and domineering. His sharp gaze slowly swept across the crowd before finally landing on Lin Yu. He raised his brow and said, You're just a little and yet you have the audacity to act so insolently in front of me. I am from Ji clan. Lin Yu straightened his neck and said unyieldingly, If you attack me, you'll be making an enemy out of the Ji family. Are you really not afraid of death? Ji family? Ji Jotian smiled. If not for the fact that he wanted to leave this old man for Yun Luofeng, perhaps he would have already made him bleed on the spot. You can scare me just by moving out of Ji family. The man slightly raised his slender hand. At that moment, Lin Yu felt his breathing stagnate. It was as if the man could strangle him to death with just a raise of his hand. Get lost and host the meeting. The man's red lips parted and his voice was incomparably domineering. In fact, it was clear that he did not place the Ji family in his eyes at all. Everyone was shocked. They were all trying to guess what kind of identity this man had to be able to make him say such arrogant words. Lin Yu glared at Ji Zhoutian resentfully and walked to his seat. But before he could sit down, he was interrupted by the man's cold and arrogant voice. Get lost. Lin Yu paused in his steps and turned to glare at the man angrily. What else do you want? That's my position. You don't have the right to do it. The corners of Ji Zhoutian's lips curled up into a bloodthirsty smile. A streak of blood-red light flashed across his black eyes for a moment before disappearing. Don't go overboard. Lin Yu was so angry that her entire body was trembling. This is the Ji family's territory. The Chancellor's residence in the Spirit City had already been bought by the Ji family for the sake of today's medical event. Hence, in Lin Yu's mind, the highest seat in the hall should naturally belong to him. You're not worthy. Those 3 arrogant words caused Lin Yu's face to turn deathly pale. He had only been humiliated twice in his life. The first time was in the medical tower. He had been chased out of the medical tower by Yun Luofeng in front of everyone. The second time was now. Without waiting for Lin Yu to recover from his rage, the man flicked his sleeves and rose to his feet. His figure was like a ray of red light as he instantly appeared on the high seat. Her red robe was extremely enchanting and stunning. His hand was still supporting his head. His long and narrow eyes flashed with a blood-red light as he slowly opened his mouth under everyone's gaze. I'm just here to join in the fun. You guys continue. I'll just watch and won't say anything. The pressure that this man gave off was too strong. Under this kind of pressure, they couldn't help but sweat profusely. No one actually dared to open their mouths. The entire hall was so quiet that only the sound of his breathing could be heard. Lin Yu clenched his fists tightly as he sat down on the lower seat unwillingly. A vicious glint flashed across his cold eyes. After the meeting ended, the patriarch would appear, and as long as the patriarch appeared, it would be the time of this man's death. It was better to let him have his way for now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the medical event organized by the Ji family. Lin Yu smiled insincerely as he said, the Ji family has set up countless questions for the sake of this meeting. Those questions have been pasted on the wall and you can answer them later on. The more questions you answer, the more likely you are to become the cream of the crop. Chapter 1146. He paused before he continued. Of course, to prevent anyone from answering the questions incorrectly, the Ji family will be testing the questions at the end. If you answer more than 2 questions incorrectly, it will be judged as a failure. I hope that everyone can answer the questions accordingly. As he spoke, a smile appeared on Lin Yu's face. These questions were extremely difficult and not many people could answer them. Hence, they could not answer the questions incorrectly. If they answered more than 2 questions incorrectly, it would be judged as a failure. So what if Yun Luofeng's medical skills were superb? As long as he judged her as a failure, she would not be able to obtain the fruit of the soul. Ha ha ha. Lin Yu laughed maniacally in his heart at the thought of this, and the vicious light in his eyes deepened. Yun Luofeng, this is the price you have to pay for chasing me out of the medical tower. If you had knelt down and apologized yesterday, perhaps I would have forgiven you. Yet you insist on being so arrogant. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being rude. Once Lin Yu had spoken, the doctors rushed towards the white wall in a race against time. At that moment, the walls were plastered with questions. When they saw the questions, the crowd fell silent and frowned in deep thought. Miss Yun, Qing Shuang glanced at Yun Luofeng with a deep smile on her willowy brows. I look forward to your performance. If it had not been for the sake of meeting Yun Luofeng, he would not have rushed over from the Flowing Moon Empire. At the same time, he believed that Yun Luofeng would not disappoint him. When she saw that everyone had walked towards the wall, Yun Luofeng followed suit. She picked up a pen and wrote down the answers to the questions on a piece of paper. She answered the questions swiftly and smoothly. Very soon, she had already answered one question and moved on to the next one. The quiet hall grew even quieter. Those who were deep in thought turned to look at Yun Luofeng with astonishment in their eyes. Where did this young lady come from? Why can she answer the questions without even thinking? I think I've heard of her. She seems to be the pagoda master of the medical tower. Legend has it that there are many books in the medical tower that have never existed on this mainland. Hence, it's not surprising that she could answer these questions. The crowd whispered to each other and discussed animatedly. A moment later, someone returned to his senses and hurriedly said, "Hurry up, there's not much time left. If we try our luck, we might be able to answer 1 or 2 questions." If it was delayed until the afternoon, Yun Luofeng would have answered all the questions. According to the rules of the conference, no matter whether the answer was right or wrong, as long as she wrote it down, no one else could continue to answer. Thus, after this person's topic ended, everyone began to race against time, picking up their pens and writing on the paper. Time ticked by. Dusk fell. The sunset glow filled the sky. After an unknown period of time, all the questions were finally answered. Lin Yu gently stroked his chin as he casually scanned through the answers. The more he looked, the uglier his expression became. The questions that Yun Luofeng answered were written in a fair and detailed manner. There were no problems at all. There wasn't even a single typo. However, these questions had all been discussed by countless elders of the Ji family. Yun Luofeng's brain didn't even move, and he wrote it down smoothly. How much knowledge did she have in her brain to be able to do this? No. He absolutely could not let Yun Luofeng win. Chapter 1147. It was a good thing that the Ji family had only sent him to host the competition this time and there were no other elders present. As long as he determined that Yun Luofeng's answer was wrong, who would dare to say otherwise? Cough, cough. Lin Yu coughed dryly and cleared his throat. He then said with a gloomy look on his face, "It's almost time. Everyone, put down your pens. I'll check your answers now." He placed his hands behind his back and pretended to walk forward. His eyes scanned the questions on the paper one by one. "Princess Frost, you've answered a total of 5 questions. The accuracy rate is 100%. Your Highness and Lan, you've answered a total of 5 questions but you've written 1 wrong. The accuracy rate is 80%. Lin Qi, you've answered a total of 3 questions. Lin Yu glanced at the questions that the crowd had answered and came up with the answers one after another. In the end, he had reported the names of all the people who had answered the questions except for Yun Luofeng. He had not heard her name from his lips. Yun Luofeng was not anxious. Her beautiful face was calm and a demonic light flashed in her smiling, black eyes. She leaned lazily against a pillar as she stared at Lin Yu's sinister expression with a forced smile. Lin Yu sensed her gaze and instinctively glanced at her. He then smiled icily and said, "Yun Luofeng, you've answered 20 questions." 20 questions had surpassed the total answers of the rest. In an instant, everyone raised their heads and looked at Yun Luofeng. Compared to the outcome of the competition, they were more interested in knowing how accurate Yun Luofeng's answers were. As the crowd waited anxiously, Lin Yu continued to speak and slowly said, "The accuracy rate is 90%. Boom. The crowd was in an uproar. In an instant, the crowd's eyes changed from curiosity to shock as if they could not believe Lin Yu's words. The accuracy rate is 90%. Is this the accuracy rate and not the accuracy rate? Does this mean that out of the 20 questions, she has answered 18 of them incorrectly? I've long known that this woman is just an embroidered pillow. She's completely useless." A woman scoffed and glanced at Yun Luofeng disdainfully. "What's the point of her answering so many questions? Aren't they all wrong?" The woman's voice was filled with jealousy. She was clearly enraged because of Ji Jiutian and Yun Luofeng's previous relationship. Therefore, her words were equally blunt. "Yun Luofeng, I never thought that your medical skills would be this trashy." Lin Yu raised his head and spoke disdainfully. "You clearly don't know anything yet you pretend to be knowledgeable. You didn't even think before writing down so many answers. If you're not trying to fool me, then what are you? I advise you to go back to your mother's womb and start anew so that you don't embarrass yourself outside." At a time like this, no one doubted Lin Yu's words. After all, in their hearts, Lin Yu does not have the guts to put on a show in front of everyone. What's more, they had all seen Yun Luofeng's speed as he wrote the answers. If she didn't write nonsense, how could she have such speed? Ji Jiutian narrowed his long and narrow eyes as he looked at the girl in white with a smile on his lips. He did not think of helping Yun Luofeng out of this predicament. Instead, he wanted to know how she would prove herself. The corners of Yun Luofeng's lips curled up as he looked at Lin Yu with a half-smile. Are you sure that I've answered 18 questions incorrectly? That's right. Lin Yu raised his head and puffed out his chest. I have a set of correct answers in my hands. I compared them and came to this conclusion. Chapter 1148. Yun Luofeng extended his hand towards Lin Yu. What do you want? Lin Yu glared at Yun Luofeng coldly as he asked impatiently. Answer. Yun Luofeng said with a smile. Lin Yu's expression changed and he pointed at his head. My answer is already in my head. Since that's the case, what evidence do you have to prove that my answer is wrong? Yun Luofeng's smile was lazy and evil. Who can prove that you're not abusing your position to avenge a personal grudge? Haha. Lin Yu laughed maniacally. Avenge a personal grudge? If I, Lin Yu, wanted to deal with you, I don't need to do it on such an occasion. What ability do you think you have to compete with the Ji family? As long as I give the order, you will die here. However, I, Lin Yu, have always repaid evil with good. No matter how cruel you are to do to me, I would never stoop to fighting a girl like you. His words were filled with righteousness, and when they fell into the ears of others, Yun Luofeng impressively became a narrow-minded person. On the other hand, even if he was humiliated by Yun Luofeng in front of everyone, he was not willing to argue with a woman. I will only ask you one thing. If I can prove that I did not answer these 18 questions incorrectly, then what are you willing to pay? Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes. A dangerous light flashed across his black pupils. She lifted her chin slightly, revealing her arrogant nature. That's impossible. My judgment can't be wrong. If you can really prove that there's no problem with your answer, in that case, I'll kneel and kowtow to you a few times, said Lin Yu as he shook his head. Proof? How could she prove it? In this medical conference, he was the only one who could make decisions. Why would he be afraid of a little girl? Actually, if you want to prove it, it's very simple. Yun Luofeng raised the corner of his mouth, his smile sinister. Before Lin Yu could react, the young girl suddenly raised her leg and sent him flying with a kick. You! Lin Yu raised his head in anger but saw that the young girl was already in front of him. She stepped on his chest with one foot and took off the space ring on his finger from above. Her demonic gaze was filled with coldness, making him shudder. Remove the restriction on the spatial ring. Lin Yu's face turned pale in an instant and panic appeared in his eyes. What are you trying to do? This spatial ring contains my many years of treasures. I definitely can't give it to you. Men, quickly seize this woman for this old man. Lin Yu never imagined that Yun Luofeng would have the guts to attack him in public. He had underestimated her. Immediately, all the guards of the Ji clan pulled out their weapons and were about to rush towards Yun Luofeng. Miss Yun, don't worry and deal with him. Leave the rest of the Ji family to my flowing moon empire. At this time, Princess Qing Shuang stood on Yun Luofeng's side without hesitation, blocking all the people from the Ji family. And Lan smiled. Princess Frost has already made a move, how can I turn a blind eye to it? Others may be afraid of the Ji family, but our peerless empire has never been afraid. He slowly walked towards Princess Qing Shuang with a smile on his handsome face. If you want to get close to Miss Yun, you must first defeat the experts of the peerless empire. In an instant, a few figures flew over from afar and stood behind Lan. Those people stared coldly at the people of Ji family. Lin Yu's face was ashen as he asked, Yun Luofeng, are you really not afraid of the Ji family? I've heard. Yun Luofeng smiled and did not answer his question. When a spatial ring changes owners, either the original owner must remove the restriction or the original owner must die. Once you die, I will be able to retrieve the items in the spatial ring. Chapter 1149. Murderous intent surged from the young girl's body as she spoke and surrounded Lin Yu. Lin Yu could clearly sense that Yun Luofeng's murderous intent had been triggered. This woman has no regard for the Ji family at all. Furthermore, in her eyes, his own life was nothing more than a trifling matter. Lin Yu had no choice but to remove the restriction on the space ring as he glared hatefully at Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng raised her hand and a scroll appeared in her palm. She handed the scroll to Qing Shuang and raised her brow. "Please help me check my answers." Qing Shuang saw that Yun Luofeng had taken the scroll out of Lin Yu's ring and was shocked when she heard her words. A sense of understanding flashed across her eyes and she quickly walked towards the wall. She opened the scroll and looked at the answers Yun Luofeng had written. The more she looked at it, the more shocked she became and the uglier her delicate face became. 20 answers. All correct. She was 100% correct. It was no wonder that Qing Shuang's expression was so ugly. Lin Yu had cheated too much. Yun Luofeng had clearly answered all the questions correctly and were even more detailed than the answers on the scroll. However, he had judged her to be 90% wrong. How could Qing Shuang, who had always abhorred evil, tolerate this? Following the initial shock, the crowd was once again greatly shocked. All 20 answers are correct. Why would Lin Yu judge her to have 18 errors? He's clearly abusing his position to avenge a personal grudge. How could the Ji family's general meeting be so lax? At that moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Lin Yu's face. No one had expected Lin Yu to have the audacity to cheat under these circumstances. He. Lin Yu laughed icily and slowly rose to his feet. He flicked the dust off his robes as a disdainful light flashed in his eyes. Yun Luofeng, so what if you've answered the questions correctly? I have the final say on the fruit of the soul. If I don't give it to you, you'll never get it. He has no regard for Yun Luofeng at all. With the Ji family's protection, why would he need to fear a tiny tower of medicine? Thump. Yun Luofeng raised his leg once again and kicked Lin Yu in the chest. She had used an extremely great amount of strength in that kick. The crowd could only hear the sound of bones breaking. Soon after, the elderly figure was sent flying and landed miserably on the ground. He spat out mouthfuls of blood and stared at Yun Luofeng with bloodshot eyes. Silence. The entire hall was silent, not a sound could be heard. Everyone stared at Yun Luofeng, their eyes filled with astonishment. Although Lin Yu had cheated, he was still a member of the Ji family. Yun Luofeng actually dared to directly attack him? And Lan shook his head and smiled helplessly. It was the same back in the International League tournament. She never let herself suffer any losses. Whoever makes her suffer, she'll get it back 1,000 times over. Qing Shuang didn't speak and just stared at Yun Luofeng quietly. Her eyes flickered with a faint light, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Perhaps, he had not misjudged him. This girl was very special. Yun Luofeng. You'll die a horrible death. Lin Yu gritted his teeth and spat hatefully. You won't have a good ending in the future. I'm afraid you won't know whether I'll have a good ending or not. Yun Luofeng's foot was on Lin Yu's chest as she lowered her eyes to look at him. She then said with a forced smile, Lin Yu, I've given you a chance but you insist on making me your enemy. I, Yun Luofeng, have to suffer anything in this lifetime but I will never suffer losses. Chapter 1150. Her slightly raised brows were arrogant and confident as she proclaimed in a domineering manner. In this lifetime, she would suffer from anything but losses. Ji Zhoutian leaned his head as his narrow, almond-shaped eyes sparkled. A seductive smile hung on his coquettish face. He lifted his snow-white chin in a domineering and wild manner. The women around them glanced lustfully at his peerless face from time to time. Ji Zhoutian did not seem to notice anything as his almond-shaped eyes continued to stare at Yun Luofeng. The interest in his eyes grew stronger and the smile on his lips grew wider. Yun Luofeng, I'm from the Ji family. Lin Yu mentioned the Ji family in an attempt to remind Yun Luofeng that if he were to die in her hands, the Ji family would not let her off so easily. However, Yun Luofeng continued to slowly approach Lin Yu. Her deep, dark eyes were calm as a cold and evil smile hung on her pitilessly beautiful face. At this moment, Lin Yu felt that Yun Luofeng was like the Grim Reaper who had crawled out of hell and could reap his life at any time. Do you still remember what you've said? If you prove that my answer is correct, kowtow and admit your mistake. Lin Yu gritted his teeth. Dream on. Thump. He had just climbed to his feet when Yun Luofeng's leg turned and kicked the back of Lin Yu's leg. Lin Yu was caught off guard and knelt in front of Yun Luofeng with a thud. The pain caused him to break out in a cold sweat. Seeing that you've knelt down, I can spare your life. Yun Luofeng raised his chin and said condescendingly, however, in order to prevent you from finding trouble with me in the future, I will cripple your strength. Lin Yu raised his head in shock and looked at the smiling young girl. A chill crept into his heart. No. He screamed in his heart and hurriedly turned around and ran out of the hall. Now, his heart was filled with regret. Why had he not brought some powerful cultivators with him? Otherwise, he would not have fallen into Yun Luofeng's hands. Perhaps Lin Yu would never have imagined that Ji Zhoutian had purposely sent him a group of weak guards for the sake of putting on a show. The master of the Ji family has arrived. Suddenly, a high-pitched voice chimed in from outside the governor's mansion. Upon hearing this voice, Lin Yu's expression changed from his initial panic to pleasant surprise. He stopped in his tracks and laughed maniacally. The patriarch is here. Yun Luofeng, you're dead for sure this time. Ji Zhoutian frowned and stared coldly at the man who walked into the city governor's mansion. His long and narrow eyes were filled with anger. Tian Luo, who was hiding in the dark, could not help but break out in cold sweat. Why is the patriarch here? It's over. The family head must have angered the master this time. If the master gets angry, the master might even cripple the family head in a fit of anger. Chapter 1151. The woman who spoke could not help but glance at Ji Zhoutian with a shy look on her face. Without Ji Zhoutian, Jilan's beauty would definitely shock the world. It was because of Ji Zhoutian's existence that he was outshone. It was like an orchid blooming next to a beautiful rose. The orchid was destined to be overshadowed. Master, you have to uphold justice for me. As soon as Lin Yu saw Jilan, he sprinted towards her and wept bitterly. This time, I was ordered by my master to organize this medical conference, but I never thought that Yun Luofeng would steal my answers and answer 20 questions in less than the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn. I know I made a mistake and wanted to disqualify Yun Luofeng from participating, but I never thought that he would force me to hand over the fruit of the soul. He sounded aggrieved, as if he had been bullied. I disobeyed and he beat me until I was severely injured. Master. In the Ji family, the master did not have the highest authority. There was only one person who could be called master, however, that person was even more mysterious than Jilan. Very few people had seen him. Unfortunately, this mysterious person was the most powerful person in the Ji family. I wonder if the Ji family is ashamed of you for distorting the truth. Princess Qing Shuang glanced at Lin Yu and said coldly. The Ji family was the most mysterious family in the Wuhui continent. Even the three great empires had to respect the master of the Ji family. However, for the sake of Yun Luofeng, Princess Qing Shuang stood on his side without any hesitation, even going against the Ji family. Lin Yu snorted and glared at Princess Qing Shuang. You and Yun Luofeng are on the same side, so of course you will speak up for him. If she did not steal the answers, how could she have answered so many questions in such a short time? Princess Qing Shuang smiled coldly. That proves that she is very powerful. I was not wrong about her. Among all the doctors present, only Princess Qing Shuang stood up for Yun Luofeng. The others looked at each other, afraid that they would offend the Ji family if they said another word. Anyway, the Ji family would not blame Lin Yu for an outsider like Yun Luofeng. Why should they provoke him? Master. Lin Yu turned towards Ji Lan and cried out, Master, you must uphold justice for me. Yun Luofeng is bullying people too far. Ji Lan frowned. If this kind of cheating happened in the Ji family's territory, what would happen to the Ji family's face if it was spread out? However, He could not believe Lin Yu's one-sided story either. Therefore, he turned his gaze towards Yun Luofeng and asked, "Is this true?" Yun Luofeng curled his lips into a smile, his deep black eyes gazing at Jilan. "What do you think?" Jilan furrowed his brows. Just as he was about to continue speaking, a seductive voice drifted over, shaking his soul. "This time, I've watched a good show, and I've learned what it means to make a false accusation." The man smiled charmingly and leaned lazily against the back of the chair. The night breeze blew through the hall, causing his clothes to flutter, revealing his fair and seductive skin. His voice was neither soft nor soft, but it successfully attracted everyone's attention. Jilan was taken aback. He gazed at Ji Jotian, who appeared behind the crowd. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead uncontrollably. "You damned brat, try saying that one more time." Lin Yu was enraged. He glared fiercely at Ji Jotian before turning his gaze towards Jilan. "Master, this brat's relationship with Yun Luofeng is unclear. You can't believe what he says. Besides, he had just insulted our Ji family and threatened to destroy our Ji family. Most importantly, he said that everyone in our Ji family is not a good person, including Master." Chapter 1152. In the Ji family, the Master's position is the most important. The Master's protection of the Master is no less than anyone else's. If he hears anyone insulting the Master of the Ji family in this manner, he would certainly fly into a rage. Lin Yu curled his lips complacently at the thought of this. His gloomy gaze swept towards Ji Jotian behind him. At this moment, he did not notice that Jilan's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. His clothes were drenched in sweat. Jilan instinctively raised his hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead and hurriedly walked towards Ji Jotian. "Damned brat, this is what you get for humiliating the Ji family. This time, you're dead meat." When Lin Yu saw Jilan walking towards him, he thought that his master was about to attack Ji Jotian and the complacency on his face deepened. However, Jilan's next words caused Lin Yu to be dumbfounded on the spot. "Ancestor, what are you doing here?" "Ancestor?" In the Ji family, there was only one person whom the master would address as ancestor. Whoosh. Lin Yu's face suddenly turned pale. He stumbled a few steps back and his body swayed. Impossible. How could this man be the master? The most mysterious person in the Ji family? This doctor's conference has certainly put on a good show for me. Ji Jotian smiled seductively. His smile was cold and sinister as his voice rang out icily. Some people had used their status as the organizer to judge the doctor who had answered the wrong question as a failure. In the end, they had framed the doctor. I reckon that even a big drama wouldn't be as interesting as today's show. "Ancestor, please forgive me. I'll take care of this." Jilan wiped the cold sweat from his forehead once again. He never thought that his ancestor would appear here. "There's no need." Ji Jotian glanced at him icily. "I had asked Lin Yu to organize this doctor's conference so that I could send him to Yun Luofeng and let him do whatever he wants with him. Yet, you had to come and cause trouble." Jilan's sweat began to flow again. He could tell that his ancestor was enraged this time. "Ancestor, please hand Lin Yu over to me. I won't disappoint the master." At a time like this, he could only atone for his sins by doing something that would satisfy his ancestor. "I'll believe you for the time being." Ji Jotian narrowed his eyes and a dangerous arc flashed across his long and narrow eyes. "If you displease me even a little bit, then it's time for the Ji family's head to change." "Yes, master." Jilan's face turned pale. She turned to Lin Yu and her eyes were filled with rage. "Lin Yu, you've done something wrong yet you dare to frame others. According to the Ji family's rules, you won't be able to atone for your crimes even if you die 10,000 times. Thump. Lin Yu suddenly knelt on the ground and kowtowed in fear. "Family head, please spare my life. I know I was wrong. I won't dare to do it again." Jilan waved her hand and said in a cold voice, "Men, take him down for this patriarch and bring him back to be punished according to the patriarch's rules." "Yes, patriarch." Instantly, Two cultivators stepped out from behind the scenes, grabbed Lin Yu's body and dragged him away. Lin Yu's agonized cries could be heard throughout the hall. It was only when his voice faded away that everything returned to normal. The crowd was so frightened that they did not dare to say a word. Their stunned gazes landed on Ji Zhoutian. The unmarried women, in particular, wished that they could pounce on Ji Zhoutian like hungry wolves and devour him dry. Not only was this man devastatingly beautiful, his status was also so noble. If they could become his concubine, they would enjoy endless glory and wealth in this lifetime. Chapter 1153. Ji Zhoutian's eyes were fixed on Yun Luofeng. His smile was like a beautiful painting. Yun Luofeng, you have won the competition. The fruit of soul belongs to you. Yun Luofeng looked at Ji Zhoutian silently. After a long time, she asked, "Are you the ancestor of the Ji family? Also, did you specially set up this competition?" "That's right." Ji Zhoutian did not deny Yun Luofeng's words. "I just wanted to attract you here and see what kind of person you are. Fortunately, you did not disappoint me." Yun Luofeng did not say anything and quietly stared at Ji Zhoutian. Ji Zhoutian slowly walked in front of Yun Luofeng. His slender fingers gently pinched a black fruit. His action was very seductive and could easily provoke people's souls. The fruit of soul in Lin Yu's hand is fake. This is the real fruit of soul. Because the fruit of soul is very precious, countless strong cultivators want it. Therefore, you may encounter some trouble in the future. He laughed wildly. "I believe that you can solve these problems with your strength. Therefore, I will not help you. I, Yun Luofeng, am afraid of anything but trouble." Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and took the fruit of soul from Ji Zhoutian. "Moreover, I have many troubles around me." Ji Zhoutian was stunned. Indeed, the people around Yun Luofeng would have some troubles. For example, if the people of the Tianhui Empire knew about Elder Ji Yang and Qing Mu, they would definitely come looking for Yun Luofeng. Moreover, there was an even bigger trouble around her. "Take care of yourself." Ji Zhoutian laughed and gently patted Yun Luofeng's head. Then, he walked out of the hall with an insolent laugh. In the blink of an eye, the enchanting red dress disappeared into the sunset. Ji Lan wiped her cold sweat and nodded to Yun Luofeng. Then, she quickly left with the group of people from the Ji family. Yun Luofeng withdrew her gaze and put away the fruit of soul. Her dark eyes turned to Princess Qing Shuang and said, "Thank you." Although Princess Qing Shuang was not threatening, she was the only one who had stood up for her. And Lan looked a little embarrassed. He had hesitated before, so he did not stand up in time like Princess Qing Shuang. He had also missed the only opportunity to establish a friendly relationship with Yun Luofeng. "You're welcome." Princess Qing Shuang blinked as a smile appeared on her beautiful face. "Moreover, I'm helping you for my own good. I believe that with your strength, you will definitely stand at the top of the continent. When that time comes, I will be able to borrow your light. Perhaps I will even need your help in the future." Princess Qing Shuang was very honest. She did not say some high-sounding words like ordinary people. Instead, she said what was on her mind. Yun Luofeng smiled. "In the future, if you need anything, even if I am 1,000 miles away, I will rush over to help." One sentence, a lifetime of love. The grace of a drop of water must be returned with a gushing spring. After all, the Ji family was very powerful. They were on par with the three great empires. Perhaps, they were even more powerful. However, under such circumstances, Princess Frost was willing to take the risk to speak up for her. This was also the reason why she had accepted Princess Frost from the bottom of her heart. "I won't be polite." Princess Frost smiled. Her smile was very beautiful, like a flash of youth. "Qing Mu, Qing Yang, let's go." Chapter 1154. Yun Luofeng took one last look at Princess Qing Shuang, then turned and walked out of the hall. She did not notice that in the corner, a pair of gloomy eyes were staring at her. Qing Mu, that old bastard, when he left the Tianhui Empire, he was poached by Yun Luofeng. How dare he say that he's going back to his hometown? No, I have to tell His Majesty about this. Tianhui Empire. In the luxurious palace, the emperor received a pigeon message. His face was dark and gloomy. Qing Mu, that old bastard, how dare he lie to me? What do you mean by going back to his hometown? He has clearly abandoned me and chosen another place. Although he didn't need an old fellow like Greenwood who didn't listen to orders, that didn't mean he was willing to make Greenwood serve someone else. Especially when that person was Yun Luofeng. And Ji Yang, he is not a good person either. He lied to me and his disciple offended the people of the Peerless Empire. When I went out to hide for a few days, he took everyone in the Imperial Hospital away. Whenever he thought of the day he would return and see the empty Imperial Hospital, he would feel a burning urge in his heart. He wished he could tear that group of people into pieces. Your Majesty. Imperial concubine Liu smiled as she nestled in the emperor's arms. It's just Yun Luofeng, what are you afraid of? Why don't we send troops to destroy him? My dear concubine, this Yun Luofeng has gained the favor of Princess Qing Shuang of the Liu Yu Empire. In addition, she has a good relationship with the ancestors of the Ji family. I'm afraid it will not be easy to deal with him. The emperor sighed, his face full of helplessness. He also wanted to destroy Yun Luofeng, but he did not have the strength to do so. He could only watch as his enemy continued to cause trouble. Hey! Suddenly, in the imperial study, a sinister laugh came out of nowhere and echoed in the room. The emperor's face changed and he shouted, "Who is it? Come out now." As soon as the emperor finished speaking, the sinister voice came out again. How dare you be an emperor with such courage? You should just change the dynasty. As soon as he finished speaking, an old man shrouded in darkness appeared in front of him. A layer of black fog floated around the old man's body, making it impossible to see his original appearance. His voice was dry and hoarse, as if a hand was grinding against a wooden board, giving off a very uncomfortable feeling. Who are you? The emperor looked at the old man cautiously and asked. The old man's gloomy voice sounded again. Someone who came to help you. Help me. The emperor was stunned for a moment, and a light flashed in his eyes. That's right, the old man said in a deep voice, I can help you unify the mainland, I can help you take revenge, and I can even provide more power to the cultivators of your empire. The emperor was still very cautious. What do you get out of helping me? If there were no benefits, why would this old man help her for no reason? I want the imperial seals of your 3 empires. The old man's voice was like sand, making people feel very uncomfortable. However, hearing his words, the emperor was stunned. What do you want the jade seal for? You don't need to know how to use it. As long as you understand it, I will be able to help you. After I help you, you can give me the jade seal. This is a fair deal. Unifying the continent was probably everyone's dream. If he really had such an opportunity, how could he give it up? Chapter 1155. Thinking of this, the emperor gritted his teeth and said, Okay, I promise you. The premise is that you help me unify the mainland first. At that time, I will give you the imperial jade seal. Hee hee. The old man laughed sinisterly. I won't show up when you do these things, but I can make the army of the Tianhui Empire very powerful, immortal and indestructible. Immortal and indestructible? The emperor's eyes lit up. Deal. If there really was an immortal and indestructible army, then from now on, who in the entire mainland would dare to defy him? Ha ha ha. The more the emperor thought about it, the more he could not help but laugh. His laughter spread out and lingered in the sky for a long time. When Imperial concubine Liu heard the conversation between the two, her beautiful eyes turned slightly, and a sinister look flashed across her eyes. She hurriedly gave a few instructions to the palace maid beside her, and could not help but raise the corner of her lips into a sinister smile. Wuhui continent. The situation was bound to be broken because of this. Tianyun nation. In the Yi residence, Jun Fengling looked at the sky leisurely, with a touch of uneasiness in her eyes. Jun. Yi Jingchen walked to Jun Fengling's side and hugged her from behind. Are you thinking about Xiao and Feng again? Jun Fengling shook her head. I don't know why, but I've been feeling a little uneasy recently. It seems that something big is going to happen. Jun, don't worry. I will protect your safety. As long as I'm not dead, I will stand in front of you and never let you get hurt. Yi Jingchen's voice was very firm, and he made a solemn vow. Jun Fengling lowered her eyes and smiled. She gently stroked her round belly, and the smile on her lips revealed a gentle light. Brother Yi, I feel that in these few days, our child will be born. How good would it be if Xiao and Feng were home at this time? Feng's medical skills are excellent. If she's here, the baby and I will be safe. She sighed softly, and her words were filled with unspeakable sorrow. Yi Jingchen held her hand tightly. Jun, you still have me. Believe me, I will not let anything happen to you and your child. I hope so. Jun Fengling sighed again. She looked at the blue sky, and the worry in her heart grew, making her feel very uneasy. This is bad. At this time, a maidservant hurriedly ran over and said, Young master, young madam, the Tianhui Empire's army is attacking. What? Yi Jingchen and Jun Fengling looked at each other in shock. What's going on? Wasn't there a rule among the countries that forbade the use of troops and horses? How dare the Tianhui Empire break this stalemate? Yi Jingchen frowned, his handsome face was cold. E.g. Jun Fengling held Yi Jingchen's hand tightly. Why now? If it had been half a month later, my child would have been born, and I would have been able to fight alongside you. Unfortunately, I can't help you now. Once the Tianhui Empire attacked, as a member of the Yi family, Yi Jingchen must lead his men to fight. However, her heart was very uneasy. He felt that if Brother Yi went there, he would never be able to return. Jun, go back and wait for me. Yi Jingchen comforted Jun Fengling and said gently. No. Jun Fengling held him tightly, for fear that once she let go, this man would leave forever. Yi, I want to face this with you. They had always been fighting side by side and had never been separated. Chapter 1156. At this time, how could she leave Yi Jingchen to face the danger alone? Jun. Yi Jingchen lowered his head and kissed Jun Fengling's forehead. Protect our child and wait for me to come back. Child. Jun Fengling's body trembled. Her palm touched her belly, and her face was a little pale. Yes, if she and Brother Yi died together on the battlefield, she could also be a couple with him in hell. If so, what about their child? How could he, who hadn't even seen this world, lose his life just like that? Brother Yi. I will wait for you to come back. Jun Fengling's lips were pale, and her voice was trembling. You must come back. Our child can't live without a father, and I can't live without you. I promise you, I will come back. Yi Jingchen looked at Jun Fengling and turned to walk out of the Yi family. Looking at the man's figure leaving, Jun Fengling finally couldn't hold back. She covered her lips tightly with her hand, and tears flowed from between her fingers. Suddenly, a throbbing pain came from her lower abdomen. She lowered her body in pain, and her beautiful face was pale and colorless. Young madam. The maidservants saw Jun Fengling's strange appearance and hurried forward to support her body. Quick, help me back, I think I'm going to give birth early. Jun Fengling clenched the corner of her clothes tightly, and cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Did God also know that Brother Yi was going to the battlefield, so he let her child be born early? What happened? The rest of the Yi family was also alarmed and hurried out. They saw Jun Fengling being supported by the maidservants, and their faces changed. The army of the Tianhui Empire is here, and the young master went to fight outside the city gate. Young madam was shocked, and her child is going to be born early. The maidservant hurriedly explained. What? Old Yi was furious. The people of the Tianhui Empire dare to attack our Tianyun country? Men, fight with this patriarch. Old Master Yun, I'll leave my daughter-in-law to your Yun family. Before leaving, Old Yi did not forget to tell Yun Luo. Yun Luo nodded. Jun is my granddaughter's future mother-in-law. I will definitely take good care of her. You can rest assured. Thank you. The old man from the Yi family cupped his fists and led the Yi family's experts away. Shinna, Yun Qingya frowned as a resolute look flashed across her cold and handsome face. I'll go help. You take care of the Yi family's young madam. Ningxin was taken aback. Big brother Yun, I also want to help you fight. No. Yun Qingya shook her head. There's only one woman in the Yi family, Yi Qi. I'm afraid she won't be able to take care of the Yi family's young madam by herself. I want you to stay and help. More importantly, he didn't want Ningxin to face such danger. Hearing this, Ningxin nodded lightly. Okay, big brother Yun, I'll listen to you. Go and come back quickly, I'll take good care of the young madam. Yun Qingya glanced at Ningxin, then turned around and walked out. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared from Ningxin's eyes. She came back to her senses and said, Young madam is due to give birth in a few days, so there are midwives in the manor. Quickly help young madam into the manor to rest. Yi Qi, accompany your adoptive mother. I'll go find the midwife. Yi Qi hurriedly nodded. She looked anxiously at Jun Fengling and gently held her hand. Adoptive mother, don't worry about adoptive father. He'll be fine. When you give birth to the baby, he'll be back. Chapter 1157. Jun Fengling was in so much pain that she had no strength to speak. Sweat dripped from her forehead. She clenched Yi Qi's hand tightly and bit her lip until it bled. She had no other wish now. She only hoped that after the birth of her child, she could go and help Yi Jingchen. Outside the city gate, under the leadership of a middle-aged general, a group of soldiers stood there, shouting incessantly. The gate of the city slowly opened. The first to step out was Jian Chengwen, dressed in a military uniform. He held an iron sword in his hand and was followed by a group of soldiers. Next, Yi Jingchen and the others rushed over and blocked the city gate. Jian Chengwen, I didn't come to Heavenly Cloud Nation for your imperial family. I came here to cause trouble for the Yi family. If you leave now, I might spare your life. The general sneered, otherwise, don't blame me for destroying your imperial family. Jian Chengwen's expression was cold. The Yi family is a force of our Tianyun kingdom, so I have the right to protect them. Moreover, have you forgotten the rules of the various kingdoms? Rules? The general laughed. What rules? Why don't I know? I only know that the Wushuang Empire and the Liuyu Empire will soon become the vassals of our Tianyun kingdom. Jian Chengwen's face changed. What do you mean? My meaning is very clear. This continent will soon become the world of our Tianyun kingdom. Ha ha ha. The general laughed again. Come, kill everyone in the Yi family, leave no one alive. Oh, I forgot. Yun Luofeng's relatives are also in the Yi family. At that time, I must torture them. That depends on whether you have the ability to do so. Yi Jingchen stepped forward and said mockingly. Kill them. The general waved his hand and said coldly. In an instant, the soldiers behind him rushed into the battlefield like a group of madmen, and the sounds of battle shook the heavens. Yi Jingchen rushed into the crowd and stabbed a soldier's chest with his sword. The soldier's face remained expressionless, as if he did not know pain. He punched Yi Jingchen hard. Yi Jingchen's eyes narrowed and flashed past. At this moment, the bloody hole in the soldier's chest gradually healed. That's right. The place where Yi Jingchen had stabbed him earlier was healing at the fastest speed possible. What's going on? Yi Jingchen's face drained of color as he retreated into the crowd of the Yi family with a solemn expression. Jian Chengwen frowned. These soldiers are strange. They are like puppets that don't know pain. They only know how to charge and break through enemy lines. Moreover, they have the ability to heal themselves. What happened to the Tianhui Empire? Yi Jingchen's eyes darkened. When he saw that there were no powerhouses among the attackers, he thought that they would be dealt with quickly. Who would have thought that these soldiers would be immortal? Be careful. Seeing the soldiers attacking Yi Jingchen, he shouted, pulling Yi Jingchen out of his thoughts. He hurriedly raised his sword to block the attack. Just now, he encountered God of Meng on the battlefield. If it weren't for Jian Chengwen's warning, he might have been seriously injured. No. Jun-er was still waiting for him at home. He had to get rid of these people as soon as possible. At this moment, there were no pedestrians on the streets of the Tianhui Empire. Those people had already been warned by the imperial family and had closed their doors, so the whole street seemed extremely desolate. Only the sounds of fighting could be heard. Chapter 1159. Before Yun Luofeng left, he was afraid that Zhun Fengling would encounter danger during the birth, so he deliberately left some medicinal herbs behind to prevent any danger from happening. Godmother, why didn't you take this medicine out earlier if you had it? Yi Qi asked angrily. You scared me to death just now. Zhun Fengling smiled weakly. I still had strength at the time, so I didn't need this medicine. If I really didn't have any strength, I would definitely take it. I won't let my children be in danger. Of course, if the people from the Tianhui Empire hadn't suddenly attacked, she would have taken the medicine. It was because she wanted to help Yi Jingchen that she planned to wait until after the birth to take the medicine. Okay, I'll go get it. Yi Qi had always seen the relationship between Zhun Fengling and Yi Jingchen over the years. How could Godmother wait here with peace of mind when her godfather went to face the danger? She had never been a woman who hid behind a man. Even if she had just given birth, she would go to the battlefield and fight side by side with her man. Yi Qi quickly brought a piece of blood ginseng. Zhun Fengling put the blood ginseng in her mouth and felt the strength in her body gradually increase. Chichi, Miss Ning, I'll have to trouble you two to look after my two children. After saying this, Zhun Fengling's body turned into a gust of wind and quickly rushed out. The sand at the city gate was dyed red with blood, but it had become black with the erosion of time. However, the black blood was quickly dyed with new blood, and it was a beautiful red. Yi Jingchen was panting as he fought the enemy. He felt his spiritual power and physical strength gradually being consumed. If he continued to fight, his spiritual power would be depleted, and he would be at the mercy of others. Bang! Suddenly, the general saw that Yi Jingchen was gradually losing strength. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he hurriedly punched and sent Yi Jingchen flying. The spiritual power penetrated into Yi Jingchen's internal organs, causing his face to turn pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Shoot! Kill Yi Jingchen first. The general sneered, waved his hand, and ordered cruelly. The archers raised their arrows and aimed at Yi Jingchen's body. Thousands of arrows were fired at the same time. If it had been in the beginning, these arrows would not have been a problem for Yi Jingchen, and he could have easily avoided them. But now, he had used up all of his spiritual power, so he had no time to deal with the enemies in front of him. Yi Jingchen raised his head and faced the tens of thousands of arrows without any fear of death. Suddenly, an anxious voice came from behind him. No. Brother Yi, quickly get out of the way, quickly go. His body trembled. When he turned his head, he saw Zhun Fengling rushing towards him. Her eyes were filled with despair as tears streamed down her beautiful face. Her pale face was extremely translucent as she stared at Jiyu Ruoyun with heartache. Yi Jingchen stretched out his hand, wanting to touch the woman's face, but the woman was still a distance away from him, so he could only touch the air in front of him. The members of the Yi family also stopped fighting. When they saw the arrow flying towards Yi Jingchen, they rushed towards him as fast as they could. Poochie. Time was silent at this moment. Zhun Fengling, who was running wildly, also stopped in her tracks. She covered her mouth tightly with her hand, tears streaming down her face uncontrollably. The sword in Yun Qingya's hand slipped down. Her cold and handsome face was filled with sorrow at this moment. His gaze was as if he couldn't believe what was happening in front of him. Chapter 1160. Yi Jingchen was stunned. He didn't feel any pain from his body, so he turned his head. In an instant, his pupils shrank, and anger welled up in his heart. In front of him, the man opened his arms and used his strong body to block Yi Jingchen. Countless arrows penetrated his body, and blood flowed along the arrows and fell to the ground. His body was like a huge mountain, but it made Yi Jingchen's heart tremble. General Jian, boom! The mountain-like body collapsed with a loud bang, falling straight to the ground in front of Yi Jingchen. General Jian. Yi Jingchen climbed up from the ground and crawled towards Jian Chengwen. He used all his strength to crawl to his side, tears streaming down his face. General Jian, why did you do this? Why? Who said that a man shouldn't cry easily? It's just that it wasn't painful. General Jian coughed twice, and a mouthful of blood came out of his mouth. His voice was so weak that it seemed like it would disappear at any time. I promised Xiao Feng that when she was away, I would protect her family for her. A man's words carry weight, and I must do what I promise. On that day, Yun Luofeng helped Jian Chengwen to break through his strength. In exchange, she asked Jian Chengwen to protect her family when she was away. But she didn't expect that Jian Chengwen was willing to lose his life for this promise. After saying this, Jian Chengwen's hand fell from Yi Jingchen's palm. His eyes gradually closed, and he quietly lost his life. No. Yi Jingchen raised his head and shouted, Tianhui Empire, you will die a horrible death. You will die a horrible death. His voice was full of anger, and his sad eyes were bloodshot. He turned his head and stared at the general of the Tianhui Empire. You are a person who has exhausted your spiritual power. What qualifications do you have to curse me? The general smiled coldly. Besides, Jian Chengwen was courting death. It has nothing to do with me. The people of the Yi family were immersed in a sad atmosphere. Now that they heard the words of the general, their sadness turned into anger, and they madly attacked the soldiers of the Tianhui Empire. However, no matter how strong the Yi family's experts were, they were no match for this undying and indestructible army. No matter how much damage they suffered, they didn't know pain. Therefore, if this continued, the Yi clan would exhaust all their spiritual power. If it was just exhaustion, he could rely on the blood ginseng to recover. It was not so easy to exhaust his spiritual power. Looks like I'm late. Suddenly, a cold voice came from the side. It was as if a force had mixed with this voice and fell into the crowd, causing the two sides of the battle to involuntarily separate. The man broke through the void and arrived. His white robe was like that of an immortal. He was handsome beyond compare, as if he had walked out of a painting. He was so perfect that it made people forget to breathe. Who are you? The general's face darkened as he asked coldly. The man raised his lips and smiled. His face was as handsome as a banished immortal, revealing a gentle luster. Yun Luofeng's old lover. If it weren't for the fact that the Yi family was grieving over Jian Cheng's death, they might have been amused by the man's words. But now, no one laughed. Their faces were filled with sorrow. No matter who you are, since you came here, you must die. The general's eyes were cold, and he ordered coldly, kill this boy. On the battlefield, the sound of fighting rang out again. Chapter 1161. Everyone rushed towards the banished immortal man while shouting and yelling. Their imposing manner was overbearing. The man lowered his eyes and sneered. He waved his sleeve and a white light hit one of the soldiers. In an instant, the soldier screamed under his attack. What? The general's expression changed. The soldiers who had been modified did not know pain. How could this man make them feel pain so easily? Your bodies have been forged to be indestructible, but your souls are still weak. As long as your souls are destroyed, you will also lose your lives. As the man said this, countless white lights fell from the sky and hit everyone's chests. These people could not help but let out sorrowful wails. Not long after, those voices gradually weakened, and some people fell straight to the ground. The man walked down from the sky. With every step he took, There seemed to be green lotuses growing under his feet. It was shocking. Thank you for saving us, young master. Yi Jingchen suppressed the sadness in his heart and bowed with his fists. Don't thank me. The man put his hands behind his back and looked as beautiful as an immortal. When Yun Luofeng comes back, tell her that I'm here to see her. May I know who you are? You just need to tell her one thing. Is everything all right since we parted at Yellow Spring City? The man flicked his sleeves and left. His gentle voice came from the sky. Brother Yi. Zhun Fengling walked forward and supported Yi Jingchen's body. She couldn't stop the sadness in her lowered eyes. Let's bring General Jian back. I just don't know if the Empress can take it after hearing the news. The Empress and General Jian had a deep sibling relationship. How could she bear such a blow? Zhun, go back first. I'm going to the palace to apologize. If it weren't for me, General Jian wouldn't have died. If the Empress is sad, I'm willing to let her vent her anger. Brother Yi, I'll go with you. Zhun Fengling raised her eyebrows and stared at Yi Jingchen. Your body is injured and hasn't recovered yet. So, I'll go with you. Yi Jingchen nodded. Then let's go. In the palace. The Empress, who had been anxiously waiting for Jian Chengwen to return, heard such bad news. She was so sad that she fainted on the spot. After waking up, she couldn't help but cry loudly. Your Majesty, this concubine's elder brother's death is too unjust. Your Majesty, please avenge this concubine's elder brother and kill those bastards of the Tianhui Empire. Seeing his beloved woman crying so miserably, the Emperor's heart ached and he hurriedly comforted her. Empress, this time, even if the entire heavenly cloud nation is annihilated, I will return to the heavenly empire. The Empress began to cry again. Her cries echoed throughout the entire backyard of the imperial palace, causing everyone to panic. Your Majesty, Empress, it's all my fault. Yi Jingchen stepped forward slowly. General Jian died at the city gate because he tried to save me. The Empress wiped her tears and said, Young Master Yi, this matter has nothing to do with you. You don't have to blame yourself. The ones who deserve to die are the beasts of the Tianhui Empire. This Empress can still distinguish between good and bad. What's more, I'm proud to have a brother who keeps his promise. If something really happened to you, it would be hard for me to face Feng in this life. Empress. Zhun Fengling looked at the Empress's swollen eyes and pursed her lips. I just sent a message to Feng. When she comes back, it will be the day of our revenge. Chapter 1162. Good. The Empress clapped her hands and gritted her teeth. Madam Yi, when the time comes, help me turn Feng life around and bring the Emperor of the Tianhui Empire back to me. I want to eat his blood, drink his flesh, and use his bones to honor my brother. Master Yi, take your wife back first. The Emperor smiled bitterly and helplessly. I heard that Madam just gave birth and went through a battle. It will definitely affect her body. Take her back to recuperate. I and the Empress won't blame you for this. That's right. The only ones who deserved to die were the bastards of the Tianhui Empire. They hated the people of the Tianhui Empire. Let's go. Yi Jingchen held Zhun Fengling's shoulder and said gently, I'll take you back to rest first. When Feng comes back, we'll decide how to take revenge. Zhun Fengling nodded gently. She looked at the Empress, who was nestled in the Emperor's arms, and her eyes flashed with guilt. She immediately turned and walked out of the palace. In the palace. In the back garden. Zhun Fengling remained silent. Her whole body was shrouded in a layer of sadness. It was obvious that she had not come out of the previous incident. Yi Jingchen quietly accompanied her, not saying a word. Brother Yi, Zhun Fengling suddenly stopped. In a few months, let's leave the Yi family. Leave? Yes, if we stay in the Yi family, it will be difficult for us to grow stronger. We have to go out and train like before. Only then can I grow faster. Zhun Fengling turned to look at Yi Jingchen. I don't want what happened today to happen again. I don't want any more casualties around me. I don't want to experience this pain again. These days, Jian Chengwen often went to the Yi family and established a good relationship with Yi Jingchen and his wife. Her heart ached when she thought of her old friends dying on the battlefield. Okay, in a few months, we'll leave and let the Yi family take care of the children. When they thought of their 2 newborn children, their hearts were filled with reluctance. But what could they do? Only by becoming strong could they protect the people around them. Although Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao were strong, they could not stay in the Yi family forever. If something like this happened again in their absence, how could they deal with it? Therefore, they had to abandon their newborn child and go out to improve their strength. Yi Jingchen held Zhun Fengling's hand tightly. Zhun, I know you can't bear to part with the child. Don't worry. The child will understand you in the future. Zhun Fengling nodded weakly. No matter how reluctant she was, she had to leave. Yi Ji, I'm tired. Let's go back and rest. After saying this, Zhun Fengling walked out of the palace. Since the Yi family had a wet nurse, there was no need for Zhun Fengling to feed them. Therefore, when she returned to the Yi family, she glanced at the 2 children and went back to her room to rest. After giving birth, she didn't sleep for a day and a night. After giving birth, she went to the city gate to help in the battle without resting. In the end, because of Jian Chengwen's death, she fell asleep as soon as she went to bed. This sleep lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. During this time, Yun Luofeng, who was far away in Endless City, had already received a letter from the Yi family. She clutched the letter in her hand, and her face was frighteningly gloomy. Miss Yun, what happened? Qing Shuang, who was sitting in front of Yun Luofeng, was stunned when she saw Yun Luofeng's terrifying expression. Chapter 1163. The Yi family sent a message saying that the Tianhui Empire launched an attack on the Tianyun Empire. Jian Chengwen sacrificed himself to protect Yi Jingchen. The Tianhui Empire. Yun Luofeng clenched the letter in her hand tightly. Her beautiful face was filled with murderous intent. What? Princess Qing Shuang was shocked. You mean General Jian Chengwen of the Tianyun Empire? Yun Luofeng nodded slightly. He died at the hands of the Tianhui Empire. Yun Luofeng had asked Jian Chengwen to take care of her family, but she did not expect that this man, who valued his promise more than his own life, would lose his life because of this. Thinking of the man who affectionately called her Xiao Feng, Yun Luofeng clenched her fists tightly. Her fingertips were bleeding, but she did not notice. Hate? How could she not hate? Although Jian Chengwen was not her family, she had always treated him like an uncle. However, those people had caused his death. Your Royal Highness, something bad has happened. At this moment, a guard from the Liuyu Empire rushed in and said respectfully, Your Royal Highness, the Tianhui Empire is under attack. His Majesty ordered you not to return. What did you say? Princess Qing Shuang was shocked again. How dare the Liuyu Empire attack the Liuyu Empire? Not only the Liuyu Empire, but the Wushuang Empire is also under attack. Prince Enlan has rushed back. The guard wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and said weakly. He did not understand why the Tianhui Empire had the courage to provoke the 2 empires. Let's go back. Princess Qing Shuang's eyes darkened. She turned to Yun Luofeng and said, Miss Yun, I am sorry, I have to return. If there is a chance in the future, I will visit you again. After saying this, Princess Qing Shuang left in a hurry without looking back. In the blink of an eye, her beautiful figure had disappeared. Qing Mu, Yun Luofeng looked up and ordered, You stay here, I will go back to the Tianyun Empire. Tower Master, do you need the medical tower to go with you? No, Yun Luofeng shook his head. I will take the Steel Flame Legion with me. After saying this, Yun Luofeng walked out of the room. Qing Mu looked at the girl's receding figure and sighed, The Tianhui Empire has really made a big mess this time. Isn't that so? Ji Yang said with a bitter smile. Yun Luofeng pays more attention to relationships. They killed her people, how could she just let it go? I am afraid that the fate of the Tianhui Empire will be even more miserable than the Nangong family. Greenwood rejoiced, Luckily we left early. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to stop myself from beating up that stupid emperor. The century-old foundation of the Tianhui Empire will be destroyed in his hands. Although Yun Luofeng's expression was calm just now, in reality, he had already set off raging waves. The Tianhui Empire had offended her, so how could it survive? That was absolutely impossible. Heavenly Cloud Nation. Yi family. Zhang Fengling sat in the courtyard with the children in her arms. Her handsome face raised a shallow arc, and her gentle gaze enveloped the two children in her arms. Adoptive mother, let me help you. Yi Qi stepped forward and wanted to help Zhang Fengling hold the children. Zhang Fengling shook her head. No, when the Tianhui Empire is destroyed, I will leave with your adoptive father, so I want to cherish the time I have with them. Chapter 1164. During this period of time, Zhang Fengling did everything herself. Even feeding the children, she did it herself. Because they didn't have much time left, she wanted to spend the last time with them. Young master, young madam, Miss Yun is back. Suddenly, a joyful voice came from outside the door. Zhang Fengling's fingers trembled and she hurriedly stood up from the pavilion. Her eyes were filled with tears of surprise as she looked at the young girl who walked in from outside the courtyard. The young girl's clothes were whiter than snow. When her eyes saw Zhang Fengling standing in the pavilion, she couldn't help but stop. Zhang Fengling's lips trembled. You're finally back. Since Jian Chengwen's death, she hadn't been able to get out of her grief. She and Yi Jingchen blamed themselves. If they were strong enough, Jian Chengwen wouldn't have sacrificed himself in vain. Mother. Yun Luofeng walked over quickly and gently hugged Zhang Fengling. He lowered his eyes and said, I know everything. Don't worry, I will go to the Tianhui Empire later to avenge Uncle Jian. Zhang Fengling wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and forced a smile on her face. Feng the Empress's pregnancy has been affected recently. She may not be able to keep the child. I want you to go to the palace to see her. After all, if it weren't for the Yi family, Jian Chengwen wouldn't have died, and the Empress's pregnancy would have been affected. Okay. Yun Luofeng nodded. Go to the palace to treat the Empress. Zhang Fengling wanted to say something but stopped herself in the end. She looked at Yun Luofeng lovingly and said, Child, you've worked hard. I've heard about what happened in Endless City. You've just settled things there and now you're rushing back to take revenge. Mother. Yun Luofeng paused and raised his head. His deep black eyes were firm. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If someone offends me, even if he escapes thousands of miles away, I will definitely kill him. I won't let him live. Zhang Fengling stroked Yun Luofeng's hair. Then go. If you're late, I'm afraid the Empress's baby won't be safe. Okay. Yun Luofeng didn't say anything more. She looked at the two children in Zhang Fengling's arms and turned to leave. This time, she came back in a hurry and left in a hurry. He didn't even have time to bid farewell to the old master before he hurried to the palace. Perhaps it was because of Jian Chengwen's death that the Empress's pregnancy was affected, causing the entire imperial palace to be lifeless. The palace maids and guards were all silent and busy with their own matters. Yun Luofeng walked into the Empress' bedroom and immediately saw the Emperor who was personally feeding the Empress medicine. Miss Yun, you're back? The Emperor was feeding the Empress medicine when he saw Yun Luofeng pushing open the door and entering. A trace of joy flashed across his eyes. After seeing Yun Luofeng, the Empress, whose face had been full of sorrow, immediately climbed up from her bed with an unknown strength and rushed towards Yun Luofeng. Feng your Uncle Jian died so miserably. Those inhumane bastards from the Heavenly Hui Empire killed him. I beg you to avenge your Uncle Jian. The Empress cried her heart out. Her voice had already become dumbfounded. Her hands clutched Yun Luofeng's arms tightly. Her red and swollen eyes were filled with hatred. Yun Luofeng looked at the haggard face of the Empress and his tone softened. I came back this time to avenge Jian Shu. When the time comes, I will definitely bring the emperor of the heavenly Hui Empire to Zhenshu's grave and make him kowtow and apologize. And, you can do whatever you want with him. Chapter 1165. The Empress loosened her hand. That's good, that's good. You must avenge your Uncle Jian. He died so miserably. I will definitely avenge him. Of course, you have to take good care of the fetus. Jian Shu has passed away. Don't you want your child anymore? Child? The Empress's body trembled. She gently stroked her slightly protruding belly. Her eyes were filled with sadness. I know I can't do this, but when I think of your Uncle Jian's death, I can't extricate myself from my grief. The doctor said that I can't keep this child. Empress, what nonsense are you talking about? The Emperor gently stroked the Empress's black hair. His tone was slightly reproachful. Don't worry, our child will be fine. Feng'er has come back. With her medical skills, she can definitely save the child. What you have to do now is to relax and let General Jian rest in peace. Yun Luofeng's eyes fell on the Empress's belly. She pondered for a while and said, I will go to the Tianhui Empire for revenge later. Before that, I will leave you a prescription. At that time, you can decoct the medicine according to the prescription. Soon, the Empress's body will recover. Miss Yun, I really have to thank you again this time. The Emperor showed his gratitude. First, you saved the Empress' life, then you made the Empress pregnant. Now, because of you, this child can be protected. Yun Luofeng smiled bitterly. You used to thank me, and I accepted it with a clear conscience. But this time, because of the Yi family, the Empress was dragged down. Uncle Jian died to save my father, and the Empress's pregnancy was affected because of his death. So, in the end, it is the Yi family's fault. Miss Yun, are you going to avenge yourself later? The Emperor looked at Yun Luofeng and asked. Yun Luofeng nodded gently. I will be back in half a month. Good. The Emperor gritted his teeth. Those bastards killed General Jian and made my Empress so sad. I will never forgive them for this. Miss Yun, if you want to take revenge, you won't have enough manpower. You can use the troops of my imperial kingdom as you wish. I will give you full authority to deal with the millions of troops. No, Yun Luofeng shook her head. I alone am enough to destroy the Tianhui Empire. If I bring the soldiers, it will cause unnecessary casualties. I won't allow that to happen. She had always treasured anyone's life. He had never risked the lives of the Steel Flame Legion. Just like back in Endless City, she also chose to explore the underground by herself, leaving the rest behind. This was because she would never make unnecessary sacrifices. It was also because of this that the people around her were willing to obey her. After Yun Luofeng handed the prescription to the Empress, she walked out and left the palace. Empress, the Emperor hugged the Empress' body tightly and comforted her in a soft voice. Feng'er has already gone to the Tianhui Empire to take revenge. We will soon be able to see the Emperor of the Tianhui Empire's expression of regret. You should take good care of your pregnancy now. The Empress buried her head in the Emperor's chest. Thinking back to her brother's death, she still felt a heart-wrenching pain. Compared with the sad heavenly cloud nation, the Tianhui Empire was full of joy. Inside the luxurious palace, the Emperor was holding a banquet. There were songs and dances to celebrate peace and prosperity. Chapter 1166. There was a proud smile on the Emperor's face. He couldn't help but laugh when he saw the scene of him unifying the continent. Your Majesty. Noble concubine Liu raised her wine cup and walked to the front of the Emperor. Congratulations, Your Majesty, on your first victory. Before long, the Peerless Empire and the Flowing Moon Empire will become Your Majesty's territory. If the other empires do not obey Your Majesty can send people to destroy them. Ha ha. The Emperor laughed wildly again. His laughter was extremely arrogant. This continent will become my territory. Boom. Just as the emperor was in high spirits, a loud noise came from outside the banquet hall, instantly attracting everyone's attention. The emperor frowned and slowly got up. Who is so bold to dare to make trouble in my Tianhui Empire? As soon as he finished speaking, a voice came from outside the door. It was filled with murderous intent. People of the Tianhui Empire, come out and face your death. The emperor's face was very ugly. He did not expect that at this time, there would be people who were not afraid of death. Let's go, I want to see who is coming to make trouble. He flicked his sleeves and quickly walked out of the hall. The sky was dusky and there was a young girl standing in the void. The girl's white robes were particularly eye-catching in the dusky sky and could be seen at a glance. When the emperor saw the girl who appeared in the sky above the palace, his face sank. He shouted coldly, "Yun Luofeng, you actually took the initiative to come here. The people of the Tianhui Empire killed Jian Chengguan. This time, I am avenging him." Yun Luofeng gently raised his chin and said condescendingly, "Ha ha, then I want to see if you have the strength to do so. Come, catch this woman." A touch of ruthlessness flashed in the emperor's eyes as he said with a sinister smile. In an instant, a group of soldiers walked over from nearby. In the silent night, only the sound of their footsteps could be heard. The group of people surrounded Yun Luofeng like the god of death. Their aura was cold, and their faces were cold. They were like a group of emotionless machines that only knew how to kill. Yun Luofeng stood in the middle of the encirclement. His expression did not change as he stared at the group of people coldly. Kill. Following the command of the leader, all the soldiers moved and quickly rushed towards Yun Luofeng. A eunuch brought over a seat for the emperor. He flicked his sleeves and sat down. He sneered and said, "Yun Luofeng, in this life, the biggest mistake you made was to walk right into a trap." Yun Luofeng did not speak. When the group of soldiers arrived in front of her, her body suddenly burst into flames. At the same time, her evil and cold voice gradually rang out, spreading throughout the entire palace. "Fire, Milk Tea, Mouse Queen, Meng Meng, all of you, charge. Kill them without mercy." In an instant, several figures appeared out of thin air beside Yun Luofeng. The few figures quickly charged towards the group of soldiers. Fire opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of flames. The temperature of the flames was incomparably hot, and went straight into his soul. The originally expressionless soldiers were howling in pain as they were burned by the flames, and a burnt smell spread throughout the passageway. Milk Tea and the others did not have the strength of fire. Just as he bit off the soldier's arm had already grown out. No matter how ferocious its bite was, the soldier's flesh would grow back as if it was regenerating. Chapter 1167. So, Milk Tea was furious. She and Meng Meng looked at each other and rushed to one of the soldiers at the same time. She opened her mouth and bit the soldier's arm. As the three of them bit, the soldier's flesh quickly disappeared. In the end, not even a hair was left. "Can't you regenerate? I'll make sure you don't even have a piece of flesh left. Let's see how you can continue to grow." The other golden-seeking mice were also released. Although they were not as strong as Milk Tea and the other two, they were still not something the soldiers could resist. After a while, those soldiers who had a ferocious aura disappeared from the corridor of the imperial palace. The emperor's face suddenly sank. "Yun Luofeng, it seems that I have really underestimated you. You dare to come to my Tianhui Empire, so you do have some strength. Unfortunately, with your strength, it is not enough to fight against the masters of my Tianhui Empire. Hua." As soon as the emperor's voice fell, countless figures appeared in the void in front of Yun Luofeng. These people were very strong. Some of them had even reached the intermediate level of Holy Spirit realm. Yun Luofeng's eyes were dignified. His evil eyes stared at the many old men standing in front of him, and the corners of his mouth slightly rose. 10 Holy Spirit realm, 8 of them are low-level Holy Spirit realm, and 2 are intermediate Holy Spirit realm. This kind of force is indeed among the best in the continent. Of course, The strength of the Tianhui Empire was not only this. In addition to these Holy Spirit realm, there were also two people who had reached the high-level Holy Spirit realm. At this moment, these two high-level Holy Spirit realm powerhouses had already led their troops to the Wushuang Empire and the Liuyu Empire, so they were not in the Tianhui Empire. Let me think. Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin and slightly narrowed his eyes. How many minutes will it take to defeat these people? The girl's arrogant voice made the emperor furious. Little girl, being too arrogant is not a good thing. This time, I will teach you a lesson. As the emperor's voice fell, the elders had already begun to move, their figures flashed, and they attacked Yun Luofeng from all directions. Yun Luofeng stood among the crowd, his clothes fluttering in the wind. His expression did not change, and he calmly swept his gaze over the many Holy Spirit realm powerhouses. Boom! In an instant, her aura surged and burst out. Like a wave of light spreading from her body, the Holy Spirit realm powerhouses were knocked back a few steps. In the meantime, countless vines abruptly burst out of the ground and attacked the Holy Spirit cultivators from several directions. Those people were caught off guard. Their bodies were entangled by the vines and firmly fixed in the void. Yun Luofeng raised his eyes slightly and gazed coldly at the emperor. In an icy voice, he said, "What other power do you have?" You can take it out. 10 Holy Spirit Masters. 2 of them were mid-level Holy Spirit experts. However, he was actually unable to dodge Yun Luofeng's attack. The emperor's face was pale with fright. He bit his lip and asked, "You've become a Holy Spirit?" Such a young Holy Spirit was a miracle on the continent. Therefore, the emperor could not believe what he was seeing. "Your Majesty." Imperial concubine Liu was so frightened that her entire body trembled. She leaned tightly against the emperor. Her vicious eyes were filled with panic. "When you sent people to attack the Yi family, did you think about the consequences?" Yun Luofeng slowly walked toward the emperor. His expression was cold, and his killing intent was thick. Chapter 1168. Yun Luofeng, do you really think that the heavenly Hui Empire has its current strength without any trump cards? The emperor clenched his teeth and said, "Lord Shanyun, please help me kill this woman." In that instant, a figure shrouded in black mist appeared in front of Yun Luofeng. The old man's aura was cold, and he stared at the young girl in front of him. His dry and hoarse voice was like a claw constantly grinding against a wooden board, making people feel very uncomfortable. "Little girl, I advise you to leave. Don't meddle in other people's business. Otherwise, don't blame this old man for being impolite. I came here to kill the dog emperor of the heavenly Hui Empire. No one is qualified to stop me." Yun Luofeng's evil eyes glanced at the old man in front of him and said coldly, "I don't care about the hatred between you and him, but I won't allow you to ruin my plan. If you don't want to leave, then I can only kill you." Boom. A strong killing intent surged out from the old man's body. This powerful aura was so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. Yun Luofeng's expression changed slightly. She looked at the old man with a dignified expression. This old man was very strong, but she had promised the empress that she would bring her enemy back for her to deal with. "If the dog emperor of the heavenly Hui Empire doesn't die, I won't leave." Yun Luofeng faced the pressure and stepped forward. Her eyebrows were filled with arrogance and domineeringness. "Humph!" The old man snorted, and a gloomy and powerful aura spread out once again. After Yun Luofeng received this aura, her body trembled slightly. She still withstood the pressure, and the corners of her mouth curled up in a mocking smile. The old man was a little surprised. How could a mere Holy Spirit be able to withstand my oppression? This woman was not simple. She could not be allowed to live. "Little girl, you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. In that case, this old man will send you to hell." The old man's figure flashed and suddenly appeared in front of Yun Luofeng. He raised his palm and fiercely slapped Yun Luofeng's head. "Stop." Fire roared in anger and quickly pounced towards the old man. Her blood-red eyes were filled with anger, and the flames on her body burned uncontrollably. However, fire was, after all, a distance away from Yun Luofeng. When the old man's hand slapped down, she was already too late to reach his side. "You're such an old man, yet you're bullying a little girl. Aren't you embarrassed?" Suddenly, a mocking voice rang out from the void. The old man was taken aback. Because of this, a figure in flaxen robes appeared in front of Yun Luofeng, raising his hand to block the old man's attack. Bang! The two palms collided and both of them took a few steps back. The old man narrowed his eyes and looked coldly at the man who had appeared out of thin air. Qin Yuan glanced at the old man in disdain. He turned to face Yun Luofeng and chuckled. "Mistress, master asked me to come back to see you, so I have come back. Qin Yuan?" Yun Luofeng was stunned as he looked at Qin Yuan, who was standing in front of him. "If you're here, then where's Yun Xiao?" Qin Yuan scratched the back of his head. "Master still has some matters to attend to, so he couldn't come to see mistress. That's why he sent me here. I didn't expect to see mistress in danger. Mistress, take a few steps back. Let this subordinate deal with this person." The old man's expression changed from astonishment to shock. This man's strength was not lower than his own. Chapter 1169. What was this woman's identity? You are. The old man seemed to have sensed something. His eyes suddenly widened, revealing a trace of fear. That's right. He had seen this man before. Wasn't he the bodyguard who followed the god of death? Since he called Yun Luofeng mistress, did that mean that Yun Luofeng was related to the god of death? Congratulations, you guessed correctly. My master is Mistress Man, yet you want to harm mistress. If my master finds out about this, TSK, even the power behind you won't be able to protect you. Qin Yuan chuckled. However, I am willing to give you a chance. If you harm yourself, you can die without any pain. On the other hand, you know my master's methods very well. The old man's body trembled slightly. He couldn't help but feel terrified when he thought of the god of death's terrifying methods. Why? Why was his luck so bad? A random person he had met was the god of death's woman? My lord. The emperor sensed that something was wrong and hurriedly said, "Don't forget, don't you want the jade seals of the three great empires? As long as you kill Yun Luofeng, I will obtain the jade seals for you." The old man didn't speak. After a long while, he picked up a sword from the ground and gently closed his eyes. The moment the sword slashed across his neck, blood spurted out and dyed his clothes red. His body slowly fell down, and with a thud, he fell into the pool of blood. At least he wouldn't be tortured if he harmed himself. If he really fell into the hands of the god of death, perhaps even death would be an extravagant hope for him. The emperor's face was ashen and despair welled up in his heart. His body went limp and he sat paralyzed on the ground. Mistress. Qin Yuan looked at Yun Luofeng and said, "This time, my master sent me back. Besides ordering me to protect you, he also asked me to bring you an item." "What item?" Yun Luofeng raised his brows and asked. Qin Yuan took out a bronze mirror from his clothes and handed it to Yun Luofeng. "This is the celestial spirit mirror. My master asked me to give it to you. As for its use, I still don't know." Yun Luofeng put the celestial spirit mirror away. Since this was something that Yun Xiao had given her, it would definitely have an extraordinary use. Qin Yuan, go to the Wushuang Empire and the Liuyu Empire and kill all the people from the Tianhui Empire. Leave no one alive. Yun Luofeng's eyes flickered with killing intent as he coldly instructed. Yes. Qin Yuan cupped his fists. By the way, Qin Yuan, do you know why this old man wants the jade seals of the three great nations? Yun Luofeng asked, stroking his chin as if he had thought of something. Qin Yuan was silent for a while. Then, he shook his head and said, "I'm not sure either. I think the jade seals of these three nations are of no use to him." Yun Luofeng nodded and said, "When you go to those two countries, bring the jade seals to me." I always feel that the jade seals of the three great empires are different. Yes. Qin Yuan replied respectfully. After giving his orders, Yun Luofeng turned his gaze towards the emperor and consort Liu. He narrowed his eyes and smiled dangerously. I've said it before, I've come here to take your lives. She paused and continued, of course, compared to me, the Empress of Chenyun Kingdom is more qualified to punish you. Fire, take them away. Chapter 1170. All right. Fire blinked his eyes and walked towards the emperor and imperial concubine Liu with a smile. There was a sinister smile on her young and tender face. You'd better not resist. Otherwise, my flames will not listen to my orders. She opened her small hand and a raging flame burned. After seeing the raging flame, the emperor and imperial concubine Liu trembled, not daring to move an inch. That's more obedient. Fire withdrew his flames in satisfaction and laughed sinisterly. Are you coming with me? Or should I take you with me? No matter how unwilling they were in their hearts, the emperor and imperial concubine Liu still stood up and followed behind Fire. Milk tea, you guys come back. Yun Luofeng raised her hand and all the gold-seeking mice disappeared into thin air. Her gaze then turned to Fire. Let's go back. At this time, the emperor and imperial concubine Liu's eyes were filled with despair, as if they already knew what was waiting for them next. When Yun Luofeng escorted the two of them back to their country, the furious empress ignored the obstruction of others. She picked up a dagger and rushed over to stab the emperor's body. Her eyes were filled with hatred, wishing that she could cut the person in front of her into 1,000 pieces. If the man beside her had not stopped the empress in time, perhaps the empress would have completely lost her mind and moved the fetus again. After Yun Luofeng completed his promise to the empress, he locked himself in the Yi family to study the celestial spirit mirror. However, even Xiao Mo did not know how to use the celestial spirit mirror. A few days later, Qin Yuan, who she had sent to the two empires, returned. When he returned, the first thing Yun Luofeng asked was, "How did you come back to the Wuhui continent?" Qin Yuan rubbed the back of his head. The place where Master and I are now is called the Seven Continents continent. This continent is different from the Wuhui continent. In that continent, there are people guarding the wormhole. Every 2 years, those people will open the wormhole, allowing people from the two worlds to come and go. As far as I know, it hasn't been 2 years yet. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows. Then how did you come back? Qin Yuan coughed awkwardly. Well, I knocked out the person guarding the wormhole, so I walked out. Yun Luofeng slowly stood up. Qin Yuan, tell me where the wormhole is. In a few days, I will go to the 7 continents. Also, I hope that you can stay here. With your strength, you can ensure their safety. Mistress, Qin Yuan was a little anxious. Master sent me here to protect you. If I stay, who will protect you? I'll be fine. Yun Luofeng slowly turned around and looked at the azure sky outside the door. He said indifferently, also, I don't want a tragedy to happen again. Her hands clenched into fists. Now, whenever she thought of Jian Chengwen's death, her heart would fiercely tighten and she would feel extremely uncomfortable. Tragedy had already happened once, so she did not want another tragedy to happen. She could only leave with peace of mind if Qin Yuan stayed. Qin Yuan sighed helplessly. Mistress, since Master has sent me to you, I will naturally listen to your orders. Don't worry, I will protect your loved ones. Thank you. Yun Luofeng thanked him, pushed the door open, and walked out. In the hall, Yi Jingchen and his wife were playing with the 2 children. When they suddenly saw Yun Luofeng walking over, they hurriedly stood up and their eyes fell on the girl's beautiful face. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.